Well, as you heard from Penny's intro, my buddy Chip Richards is here with me, and it's been a long time coming. I've wanted to have Chip on my podcast for a long time. We finally made it happen. And before we get going, I want to tell you, we're going to be talking a lot about the themes in Chip's excellent book called Writing the Story Within, A Dynamic Creative Journey, Becoming the Writer You Came Here to Be. And Chip, curiosity, do you still offer the Writing the Story Within writing meditations and exercises to awaken your true creative voice?
Yeah, I do more do I still have that product? Absolutely. But in terms of the processes, it's interesting, and we'll share a little bit about it, but it's woven itself now more inside other work, which is sort of larger spectrum work. But those exercises and a lot of the prompts and certainly the framework is very alive, very, very alive in my work.
Great. So here's the book. If any of you wants to see the cover, you can find it on Amazon. It's on Amazon, I think, right? I know you sent this one to me, so I don't know. I've never had to go buy it.
Yeah, it should be in all the right places. Yeah.
Oh, good. And I just want to state even at the beginning, so people don't think, oh God, I'm not a writer, this isn't for me. But there's a load of information in the book that's really for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, there's sort of three core elements of the book, and the writing part is really as a doorway to accessing our own personal myth and our own personal hero or Shero's journey. And
Shero, I never heard that one.
It was a discovery that I made in a writing project where I realized, wow, if I didn't have access to my own story and wasn't deeply connected to my own story, then I couldn't write anything of real truth and meaning that other people would relate to. Right. And so I found the deeper I got connected to the archetypal rhythms of my path, the more deeply the universal tones of the story I was writing would strike. So that was the kind of doorway.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I have been teaching people how to write personal myths for many years. It's actually part of my institute training. In the last year, they have to go through the training on what are the key components of a myth that need to be in place? What are the 4 functions of a myth? And then I have them write their myth and then do a mandala to encapsulate the whole myth. And then I teach them how to use it in their daily life. And I don't know, I probably got 50 or more of them now. And it's just amazing what happens to people when they do that inner work and how it transforms them. It's just stunning.
Yeah, it's just so true. And I think really for me as a writer early on, that commitment to kind of write to the core of my own being, it infused my writing, but ultimately I started noticing patterns in the people that I was working with and the people I was coaching, that, wow, there's these patterns that, we see in the great stories of our time, but they're also woven. And the reason we relate to them is because they're woven into the DNA of our own path of becoming who we came here to be. So I love that you're using that process as a doorway for your students. That's so cool.
I think it's really important. There's lots of things I'd say about it, but I don't want to stop us from getting into the interview and sharing things in the sequence of the interview so that it has more coherence. But, Chip, you and I met in the late 90s. I can't remember, were you training athletes or were you on the U.S. ski team?
At that stage, my own personal body had exploded as a result of pushing a bit too hard in the wrong moments. And at that stage, I was coaching the Australian Olympic ski program.
Right. Yeah. We met at the Australian Institute of Sport in Canberra. And I was teaching there, which I did quite a number of times. What an amazing place that place is, eh?
Yeah, it really is. And I remember it was one of my athletes that knew of your work at that time. And he said, oh, there's this guy here, and he's a really radically different thinker in the world of, at this, in his mind, strength and conditioning and whatnot. And maybe while he's here, we can connect with him. And I went and sat in on one of your workshops, and then you spent a bit of time with us. And it, the little bit of time that we had together, it changed the narrative and story arc of that whole team for the next It just like unlocked a different way of thinking, a bit like in the Matrix. It just kind of gave people access to a different way of even thinking about the human body and the way it moved. And, I would say probably there's echoes of it still in the Olympic Winter Institute.
It's cool too, because I began getting videos from people in the Australian Institute of Sport that were applying my Swiss ball training and concepts. And I think they were the first ones to ever send me a video of somebody running up to a mini tramp, jumping on the mini tramp, doing a flip and landing perfectly on a Swiss ball, and then hopping like from that ball to 3 more balls, just like effortlessly. And I'm like, oh my God, I would freaking die if I tried that.
That's the thing about the Aussies there. And I think probably why the discipline that I was coaching, they are so great at. There's something about their spirit that just says, "Oh, give me an impulse, and I'm going to run with it. Give it a go," as the Aussies say. And then next time you look, they've taken it to another planet.
Yeah, no, it was pretty impressive, and the physiotherapists at the Australian Institute of Sport were quite tapped into. They could understand what I was teaching, so I would have to say the Australian physios were definitely some of the most intelligent and most skilled in their hands, and asked the toughest questions too, which I enjoy, and so I really developed some great connections and friendships there, including you, and here we are years later. You're the only one of that group that I've maintained contact with, meaning people from that institute that I met there.
Amazing.
But we've both been on a long journey for sure. We were just trying to figure out how long it's been. So it's been a long time. I started the Institute in 95, and then I think I was over in Australia teaching those training programs in the late 90s. I was there. I did a lot of work in Australia for about 4 years straight. So I was there for a number of years. But it's also been great for me to see, as the years, how you've moved into different areas, and like me, just followed the soul's impulse to explore the inner aspects of ourselves and sort of become an inner athlete, which I think is so important. I think we naturally get called there if we listen to our heart. And what it brings up in me is actually, I remember for a while you were really into the concept of the seed. And I don't know if you wrote a book or something, but there's something you shared with me about seeds. And I remember when you shared that with me, it immediately made me think of the Greek concept of the entelechy and the soul's guiding impulse. And it was funny because right when you sent that to me, as I was deep into these same concepts, I was studying a lot of work by Steiner on seeds and growth and how to do clairvoyant work through exercises like holding a seed in your hand and just emptying yourself and seeing what rises in you and how you could actually see the spirit of the plant or the tree and the seed and literally see it unfolding in the etheric field. And so I just thought it was interesting how, even though we've been so far away from each other, we've kind of been guided almost really like an inner hero's journey within.
I really, really love that perspective, Paul, and I totally agree. I was talking with my wife, Ash, last night, just thinking about our conversation today, and I mentioned a couple sort of touch points, really just touch points we've had in the last 2 decades, and how much they've been like seeds of new impulses. I remember, I think one of the last times we talked, it was early in your exploration of mandalas, like just a couple of years in, and you were so, and I had never even heard of them. I didn't know what it was. And you sent a couple across to me. I was like, wow, this really, there's something about this that resonates for me. And so we just went right in, and and that the circle and that whole process has become woven into some really interesting work with leaders and all sorts of different people. And it was just like a pearl dropped in the pool that just kind of went and so I love that. That feels like, even though we've been on different continents spread by the Pacific, there's been, and we shouldn't be surprised by it, right? These kind of parallel impulses and little we probably had lots of intersection points we didn't even know we had, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think what comes to my mind is there's a spiritual DNA, not just a physical one. And we're climbing that spiral ladder together. And, it's interesting you bring the mandalas up because I think it was, I don't know when it was, but I did a week-long training program with a very highly capable and skilled shaman and many other skills named Rowena Kreider. And she got me into mandala work, and it had a profound effect on me, a profound healing effect. And then I had an outpouring. And as I traveled all over the world, including Australia, I just carried a big box of Tombow watercolor pens with me, like 150 of them. So I had a large range of colors, and I would do a mandala every night. And I must have done 1,000 of them. I think I've got like almost 100 art books full of the mandalas that I did while I was traveling around the world. And I needed that. I needed that way to take the pain and the stress and the challenges and all of the intention, because childhood traumas and then traveling constantly. And then, as you know, being a pioneer, I had that kind of the challenge of being loved and hated everywhere I went.
Out on the skinny branches.
Yeah. And so it's just like, it would be so frustrating for me that I'd be teaching people sound, kinesiology, biomechanics, physiology, and rehab and soft tissue work. And just because it was so different than the way they were trained, they would just think I was crazy. But then the other half of the room began, "What's wrong with you? This stuff really works, man." And so it would just leave me feeling like, what the hell is wrong with people? Why do they not test things before they be so judgmental? And so I needed the mandalas to deal with all that, because I just found myself so frustrated that it seemed to me that the people that were the dumbest pretended to be the smartest. And, and they're one of the ones that make all the stink in a class. And I'd have to figure out, how do I get this ding dong to sit down, shut up, and pay attention, because they're lost. And so I found doing mandalas at night, I actually created a concept called turning shit into flowers, where I would take my own frustration, pain, and emotion, and I would kind of draw it out or paint it out exactly how it felt inside. And then I would just look at it and say, okay, now how can I make something beautiful out of this? And I was often just shocked and amazed at how I could take this frustration and anger and kind of intense emotion and then take it as a challenge to make something beautiful out of it. And I look back through these art books sometimes, and it's like, wow, it's almost like a pictorial tour of my own inner healing and growth process. And I think that's really very tied in with what you're offering with your work and with your book that we just shared. And I think the hero's journey is such such an important archetypal process. And even though Joseph Campbell has long died and there's countless, I've probably read every book he's got. I must have 20 plus books by him in my library. And I spent years studying everything that he wrote, because he just spoke right to my soul. And I really wish I could hug and kiss that guy. When I pass over, I'm going to go looking for him. Him and Carl Jung and a bunch of others that have just deeply touched my soul. And, so there's another parallel we had, diving deep into that, and
big time. And just listening to your story, I became first aware of that. And I think you're absolutely right. It's going to tie us right to where we're going. But at that time that you were going on that journey with your work and hitting these points where probably the pull between people recognizing the gift and the value and the power of what you were bringing, and people challenging it because of their own insecurities and unwillingness to actually pull back the curtain and go right in. would have created all this sort of integration work that can't really be done with words and couldn't really be put on a spreadsheet or dot points. Or so I can just imagine how just working with whatever was coming through just allowed for you to actually be in that journey and not have to try to rationalize it. And I can remember probably about that same time introducing mandalas to my son Josh, who was 5. And I can remember specifically moments or mornings when he was feeling really like restless or upset about something, or I don't remember the circumstance, but just saying, hey, let's sit and draw this. And him just having the drawing exercise as a visceral outpouring. And the picture might have ended up being like a giant spiral of brown with some pink punches in it and whatever. And then somewhere along the process, as you said, it would start to shift. Like his feelings would shift, and then the pictures would sometimes shift. But by the time he was finished with the process, he just completely cleared whatever was going on for him and was just ready to kind of move on to the next moment, really clean. And I love that process can work for a 5-year-old and a 50-year-old, or
whatever. Yeah.
I hope you guys are enjoying the podcast. I sure am. By now, most everyone has heard of the healing power and wide variety of nutritional benefits we gain when taking Shilajit minerals. As good as it is, it doesn't taste good at all. Imagine eating rotting rocks that have passed the due date. You're probably about right. But there is an exceptional way I get my daily doses of Shilajit that tastes fantastic. That's Organifi Shilajit gummies. The texture and consistency of the gummies is excellent, and they have just enough natural sweetness to make me feel like I'm getting a lovely, healthy treat that both my body and mind can enjoy. The only problem with Organifi Shilajit gummies is that you have to hide them when friends are around, and the kids too, or you'll go through 2 bags in no time. Shilajit is a unique mineral paste from the Himalayan mountains. It contains an abundance of trace minerals, antioxidants, organic acids, and nutrient-transporting compounds. It has been known throughout history to boost vitality and strength. Just pop a couple of gummies in and chew or suck them slowly for a steady release of the delicious, earthly, but slightly sweet natural flavor. Your taste buds will enjoy the delicious treat while your body soaks up massive amounts of feel-good nutrition. Rich with fulvic acid, humic acid, vitamins, enzymes, bioflavonoids, antioxidants, metabolites, and over 40 trace minerals, Shilajit gummies can help support energy production, support performance and recovery, support healthy muscles, promote collagen synthesis, promote healthy hormone levels, increase cellular energy, decrease fatigue, promote health. I absolutely love Organifi Shilajit gummies, and I love knowing that there's something sweet that I can eat that doesn't come with all the challenges most sweet stuff does. If you'd enjoy something tasty that enhances nutrient variety, delivers the minerals your body needs, and helps you look and feel great, don't wait. Get your Shilajit gummies now. Hint, don't just buy 1 bag because they'll be gone before you know it. Get your 20% Spirit Gym discount on your Shilajit gummies. Go to Organifi.com/Chek20. That's Organifi, Organifi.com/Chek20 to get your 20% discount on these amazing nutritious gummies.
Because I come from a background of kickboxing and boxing and a very kind of intense upbringing, I had to really hold the dragon back because there was times I just wanted to punch people for being so silly and ridiculous and combative and holding up classes, and everybody in the class is like, would you tell this guy to shut up? And it's just so funny how people have such resistance to new ideas. But I look back on it and I can see, like, if I didn't do that work, I probably would have ended up doing something bad, But the other chapter of that I just want to throw into the mix because we're having this catch up here is that in 2006, Danny Way and his brother had done their first DMT journey. And they came to me, and I worked with Danny for like 20 years. I still work with him as a consultant. And he said, Paul, this is mind blowing. Like, you got to do this. And so I went with him, and the guy that was doing it was a doctor, and he did this as part of his work with patients that needed it. And I had a frickin' profound experience on my first DMT experience. I just went right into union with God, and it was just frickin' awesome. And it just totally had a transformative effect on me. Fortunately, I'd been into samadhi with meditation probably at least 3 or 4 times prior. So when the medicine hit me full strength, I went, oh man, I know this experience. But
yeah.
Otherwise, I think it could have been like so shocking. It might have been too intense like it is for a lot of people. But I did a year of training with him, and then I became a member of the Native American Council to allow me to do it legally. And I've probably conducted 1,000 healing ceremonies with plant medicines. But my point is that when I added the plant medicine work to the mandala work, that opened up a whole new level of depth. And my mandalas then actually took on another level of, I don't know, it was almost like I could feel that the plant medicines were bringing my inner self into a state of coherence, and it was showing up clearly in my art. And so it's very interesting, because someday when I leave the planet and someone goes through my library, they're going to get to go on quite a magical mystery tour just through my art alone.
No matter what language they speak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. That's so good.
Well, what I'd like you to do is just go to take us on a journey through, what you want to share and what you have in the book. Because, you worked with me and put out such a beautiful outline. I think what I'll do is just, if I have a 2 cents to throw in here and there, I'll jump in. But why don't you go ahead and just start sharing what you want to share? Because I think you've got such a great structure to all this, that it's probably better for me to just let you lead the journey that you want to take us all on.
Well, trusting the way our lives have moved in these DNA patterns for the last 25 years or so. Yeah, that's my honor. And I feel like the outline really came to me in a quiet moment around sunrise a few days ago. And it was from the back and forth of our exchange really setting the intention for this conversation. So feels like it's been collaborative 100%.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, I love the outline. So take us into it, baby.
Let's step in. Well, my sense when I thought about your beautiful community and the work that you do inside of Myth already, it felt to me that it might be useful to share and walk through a few of the key phases of the hero's journey. They've got lots of different languages. And as you said, there's so many different books and people that have studied them, but oftentimes conceptually, and it, that the framework is used in every single feature
major
film
movie, yeah,
and everything. So, but what happens is we kind of get these concepts, and then we just, a bit like some of those guys sitting in the back of your lectures early on, we think we know them conceptually, and then we miss the opportunity to actually experience them and recognize, wow, how they can actually inform who we are and what we're doing and our perspective of what's happening. So my hope is that the conversation can create a little bit of a energetic map for people, and particularly those who are ready to consciously and deliberately write and craft their story in life.
Yeah. It's such a healing process too. And I think what I'd like to share right there is that, I've now been a therapist. This January is 42 years. So I've seen, I've actually had people I lectured to at Los Angeles Chiropractic College that have written me letters and said, I just wanted to write to you because your lectures in chiropractic college had such a profound effect on why I see the body. And now I've been practicing for, some of them 12, 15 years. My kids are now grown up and in college. And I'm like, oh my God, I am getting fucking old, man. But I think what's important for me to say is that having worked with so many patients with every kind of crisis you can imagine, what I've found very, very consistently is that people at large are living their parents' story, their programming, and their societal and cultural and educational programming. And that's what I call being mythed. But once a person, because to get to the real core of people's imbalances, diseases, etc., I have to do a very detailed analysis of the psyche and see what it is that they actually perceive themselves to be, and what are the events that shape their views of themselves and their relationships with their body, their emotions, their mind, their family, their religion, their beliefs. And I find that until a person actually does the work to write their story down and then identify where it is that they're acting out beliefs that have led to conflict within themselves and within their relationships, there's no way that they're going to heal. All they can do is just have more drugs and more surgeries, because they don't realize the power of the psyche is so formative on the physiology and the structure and the posture and the gesture and the whole experience of being oneself. But once a person actually is guided like you guide them and like I guide them, and they realize that they actually have the power to become a co-creator with Source and create the story that makes their heart feel involved and brings them into a state of awe. I can be this person. I don't have to believe that. I can investigate this belief. I can change this belief. And I think one of the most powerful experiences in my life is seeing what happens when a person realizes that, A, if you don't believe God is ubiquitous and in you and digging this whole experience, regardless of what it is, it's all great experience, but that gives us complete free will to co-create our story and be who we want to be. Just as easy as Clint Eastwood can be Dirty Harry or an old man, in a truck, we can find who it is that we really came here to be. And I think it's not an intellectual process. It's a process of really asking your heart, what is it that I feel good when I'm doing? What gives me life? What makes me feel like the juices flow? And when I can help people find that and express that aspect of themselves, I've seen diseases that doctors say are permanent and intractable just clear up sometimes in as little as a month.
Yeah, I bet.
My point is, I just think this whole concept is vital, and it's more important now than ever because the world is just so full of chaos and confusion, and AI is making it impossible to know who to trust or what to trust. And it's like we're in this kind of tornado of I don't even have a word for it. It's just like it's very hard to keep people's feet on the ground anymore. And there's so much fear-based thinking that people get trapped in their programming. And you saw during COVID how many people that were yogis and, gurus of this type or other and holistic people just became born-again Christians because they needed to revert back to autonomic programming, to programming that doesn't require thought because they feel safe, and they had to find a big daddy in the sky or a group of people to make them feel safe, but they didn't realize they were reverting backwards in their consciousness, where I take the same people as patients and help them get clear on their story and then say, what would make you feel safe because you were doing what you really came to the world to do, no matter what the hell's going on, and watch them go in the other direction and evolve in consciousness instead of reverting. So I think because of the state the world's in now, what you're offering is super important. So that said, I couldn't resist saying that because I think it's so critical. Take us down the road, baby.
I want to I could double click on about 18 sentences you said then, and we could stay right here at the doorway. Maybe I just want to say that the tornado you describe, I see it as well everywhere. I currently work with leaders in all sorts of different arenas, and it's amazing how disoriented people are to not even who they could become, but who they are. Like who's already there, right? And I think sometimes what happens is when we get our first awareness of the program that we're all living in, as you described, or the story that we're living out because it was just handed to us by our previous generation, and we don't even know we're treating our kids this way or looking at life that way. That was just given to us as a lens by our parents or their parents. When we first get that awareness, oftentimes it's like we want to throw all of that away and go, well, everything that got me here, that's just dangerous and toxic. Now I got to just kind of recreate or invent something new. And I think what the process we'll talk through and go through now gives us as an opportunity to recognize that even that twisting, winding tornado path that's brought us here, even the weird moments and the unexplainable moments and those dark moments that we repress so hard, they're all there. They've always been there in service of calling out, like pulling out that divine essence that's in us. And some of us need the whisper, and some of us need 2 blown out knees, and some of us need a car wreck or to get that, and I think it's one of the things I love about this framework is it gives us access to, in a very in kind of a pragmatic way, get up on the balcony and go, oh, wow, look at the path I've walked, and look, this moment right now that feels so odd. It's odd because this is where I am in the journey, and I can appreciate it, and then I can look kind of up from the mountaintop and see where we're going next with a little bit of deep appreciation for what's got us here, but also a big open vista for what's out there waiting, right?
Enzymes are one of the most important things we can use to supplement our diet. Very few people have normal levels of digestive enzymes. It's extremely common to be digestive enzyme deficient because so many people are eating cooked foods, processed foods, packaged foods, etc. The best digestive enzymes I've ever found are Masszymes by Bioptimizers. And one of the things I like about them is not only are they the most advanced technology for how they're produced, the science behind them, but I take them on an empty stomach every morning and every night as proteolytic enzymes to help clean my body. So I've got Wade here, who's the formulator of these enzymes, to tell us how do they work as digestive and proteolytic enzymes, because today I think we really need to be supplementing with high quality enzymes. So Wade, what's unique about Masszymes?
Well, one of the interesting things is undigested protein is one of the biggest contaminants that cause problem for people, whether it's in their blood or inflammatory conditions or even impairing recovery. And it's quite common amongst athletes who have high protein diets, interesting enough, who are looking to add recovery, but they're not breaking down their protein effectively. And that was my case way back in the day as a former bodybuilding champion. So we set about cultivating and developing an enzyme formulation that handled all of the amino acids in a pH range from 2 to 12, as well as providing an assortment of assistant enzymes. In other words, it doesn't just break down protein. It handles carbohydrates, it handles fats, it handles fibers, a variety of different things. And they work synergistically together to make sure that you can break down just about any food and digest it properly. Now, when you talk about the difference between enzymes, there's digestive enzymes and systemic enzymes. Systemic enzymes such as like nattokinase or serrapeptase. Well, they don't help break down digestion, but they can break down inflammation or inflammatory conditions, undigested proteins, or scarring tissue inside the body. Well, it turns out when you take Masszymes on an empty stomach, it works exactly the same way. It will go into the bloodstream and now works as a systemic enzyme, reducing inflammation, accelerating recovery times. Matt just tore his Achilles tendon and made a full recovery after surgery within a few weeks, which they expected for many months. He was taking as many as 100 a day. Now, I'm not suggesting people do that, but this was an extreme condition. And the bottom line is Masszymes is great for recovery, for cleaning up undigested proteins in the system, as well for digesting just about any meal. If this isn't the best digestive enzyme or systemic enzyme that you've ever taken, you get your money back. That's the Bioptimizer guarantee.
Spirit Gym with Paul Chek listeners can get 15% off their purchase of Masszymes by going to bioptimizers.com/Spirit Gym and use the code Paul15 at checkout. You can choose from 3 different sizes, and in addition, Bioptimizers always have special bonus gifts and additional savings when you get multiple bottles. So go to bioptimizers.com/Spirit Gym and check out Masszymes.
Well, exactly. And I think the concepts that come to my mind as you were talking is all that past stuff we're working through that's in the past. If we do a process like this, it becomes fertilizer that really grows us, because we have now got the clarity to know what we don't want. You know, that, for example, the average person today gets married 3 times, and they say it takes the first 2 to teach you who you're really going to be compatible with. And the third one usually is the keeper. And I think, you know, when we go through life and we get banged up and beat up and we might have terrible parental experiences, but once we can use that as fertilizer for growth, and then we can find our heart, I think oftentimes, you know, Rumi says the function of a broken heart is to let your love pour out. And I think as long as we can get past the broken heart and let the love pour out. And I think, I know from my own experience of journaling and writing and guiding others in the process, I think oftentimes it's so scary to let love pour out when you've been, you know, wounded by somebody that really loves you, or a parent wounding you, and you're confused about, you know, who am I now? I mean, does anyone love me? That it's easier to get the love to flow with a pen than it is to get it to flow out of your heart. So I think that the writing process actually opens the heart up and lets you control the flow of it through your own intention and creativity. And then I think that process helps act like a mirror. So you can kind of look at yourself and say, you know, I can clean this blemish up, and I can have a different perspective. I don't have to believe in this God. I can have my own God, and I can eat a different way. And I've just seen that if you try to take a person too fast into what you and I might perceive as their wholeness, that the shift out of it's kind of like when someone's got really bad posture. If you're too aggressive at correcting the posture, it can actually injure them, because the joint capsules and the tissues and the ligaments need time to adapt.
Yeah.
So I think the writing process is really like a well-designed corrective exercise program that has to be done in stages so that you get therapeutic results, because even the right program done too quickly can produce pain, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And I hadn't thought about that, but as you're describing it, exactly, it's like there's something happens as we start to write. And for me, it's particularly if it's a pen, and someone described to me the amount of synapses that get fired when you're holding a pen versus tapping with your thumbs.
Right.
And it's a lot more, but it seems to unravel the yarn, right? At a pace that allows us to take all this weird, complex tanglement out and starts to run it into streams. And I really like your distinction that it allows that revelation and the realizations to come at a pace that our system can integrate.
Yeah.
And so that would be an invitation actually to anybody that's listening now. As we go along on the steps of the journey here, each comes with an inquiry point to think about what's my version of that. And it might be useful for the listeners even to have a pen and a pad if they don't already, and be ready to just capture some spontaneous insight that might bubble up about the different phases of the journey.
I agree 100%. So where does the journey begin for you?
Great. So I think a wonderful place to start, and it's oftentimes the place that people fear to go first, but it's an important part. And if we even think about any of the great films or mythology that we read and watch or appreciate, we always meet our heroes or our sheroes in their what we call the ordinary world, in their normal life circumstance, how they're used to things being. And that normal, what's normal could be a housewife with 3 kids doing whatever it could be. For me, my ordinary world, when I got my first call to adventure that I can look at and see, oh, I can recognize that. My ordinary world was I was an elite level athlete. And I
Me
was
too.
putting all of my everything into reaching the pinnacle of the sport and going to the Olympics. And that was the ordinary world. And because of my commitment and my devotion, it took quite a strong interjection, lightning bolt, a couple of them, to actually shake me from that. But we'll get to the call in a moment. But the first invitation is just to, and I'm sitting in a room right outside our garden here, and I actually think about this ordinary world moment a lot like I think about my garden, that at any given moment, if we were to take a little virtual walk through the garden of my life, I can kind of get a sense for the season that it's in. Mm-hmm. I can get a sense for what's growing there now that I planted deliberately and that I've been nurturing. Mm-hmm. What's maybe growing that I didn't plant or plan for, but it's kind of, taking over maybe in some areas. And is it orderly, and is it productive, or is it a bit confused and tangled? Is the soil dry? So for me, the garden analogy really helps me get, where am I now? And mm-hmm. and that is where we meet our heroes always, is in their current world, because it's kind of like, it gives us the information we need, kind of like the diagnostics that you would do to go, okay, great. What's the deeper call to adventure mm-hmm. here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so true. And I not only think what you're saying is true on the level you've expressed it, like, we can meet people at parties or at workshops or in many circumstances and not recognize the hero in them. And then all of a sudden we might see a video clip of them or find out that they're the author of a great book and not even realize that we didn't see who was really in front of us. And oftentimes, from a different perspective, we can spend a lot of our life looking in the mirror and not seeing the hero inside of ourselves, but then get into a course with someone like you or I, or get the right book in your hands, or watch the right documentary, and all of a sudden you stand in front of the mirror and you see somebody completely different because they're inside of you, and now you've gotten permission to let them out.
Yeah, I think it's a really key point, Paul, because, and here's the rub, that oftentimes in the ordinary world, we think we're seeing ourselves who we are, right? But we've just been so, layered with all the different complexity of who we think we should be at that right. moment, or propped ourselves up to be, or who we've trained ourselves to be, that it's almost impossible for us to see a bigger picture or a deeper picture unless something cracks the ordinary view of ourselves. And in the hero's journey, in any movie you ever see, you sit down, the lights go down, you got your popcorn or whatever it is, and in those first sort of 10 to 15 minutes, you're going to meet the heroes. You're going to kind of get a sense for their current life, how it currently is. And then you just know you're going to buckle in your seatbelt because something's going to happen that radically interrupts that current life, whether it's the perfect life or whether it's already a crazy dysfunctional life, whatever is going on currently. And even it doesn't matter how attached to what's going on the hero is, what will happen in the early phase of the story is the hero receives a call. And that is some sort of inciting incident that shakes the tree strong enough for the hero to kind of fall out and then be exposed to what you just said, ultimately to who they really are. But originally, it's to a completely disoriented space where, wow, I thought I was doing this, and life just broke it open.
Yeah, and I think in my experience, a lot of heroes don't really find the hero inside of themselves till they're facing something quite significant. For example, a lot of people, when the lockdowns and all that started happening, had a real decision to make. Am I going to stand up for my sovereignty and what I know to be true from my life experience, or am I just going to roll over and join the sheep herd here and take it? So it can be, I can give you an example. When my stepfather and mother got together when I think I was about 7. And once he started being physically abusive and really hitting my mother and hurting her and us, something inside of me would even as a little boy, I mean, I was like ready to go to war with this guy, and no matter what it cost. So I would have never known that there was a lion sitting in my chest had I not been put in such a scary situation that there was, there was a piece of me that could have ran, and there's a piece of me that said, no way, man, I can't stand up for this. No matter how dangerous this is, I'm fighting. And so sometimes it's a family trauma. Sometimes it's a car accident that hurts us really bad. There's a lot of ways that we kind of get pushed into a corner. And I think, the old saying, how do you make a diamond? Pressure, pressure, pressure. I think that the transition from coal to diamond sometimes just takes pressure, and it can come in a lot of different ways. But I think that's where we really find out who it is that's really living inside of us.
We live in a world where stress is constant and distractions are endless. If you're like many of my clients juggling family, career, training, and spiritual practice, you've probably felt the toll it takes on your clarity and vitality. You may even be someone that can't get through the day without drinking coffee, even when it's not making you feel better anymore. That's why I'm excited to share something that's become part of my daily ritual, Nandaka by Peak. Nandaka means the sword of wisdom. It isn't your typical energy booster or coffee substitute. Nandaka is a sacred blend of organically grown adaptogenic and nootropic botanicals designed not to mask your fatigue, but to nourish your nervous system, feed your brain, and support deep, sustainable energy from the inside out. That's what true vitality is all about. Unlike most mushroom products that are stuffed with mycelium grown on grain, Nandaka is made from 100% fruiting bodies. That's where the medicine lives. You get the full spectrum of benefits of lion mane for mental clarity and nerve regeneration, reishi and chaga for modulating stress and inflammation, and ceremonial cacao rich in anandamide, the bliss molecule, to uplift your mood and calm your system. Even the cacao butter serves a higher purpose, acting as a delivery mechanism to carry these nutrients deep into your brain. When I take Nandaka before podcasting, teaching, writing, or conducting a therapy session, I notice something profound. The energy is steady, the focus is clean, and my creativity flows without resistance. It supports the body, the mind, and the soul all at once. And here's the truth. If your brain and nervous system are overstimulated and undernourished, you'll always be inviting burnout. That's why I don't treat the symptoms. I go to the source. And Nandaka aligns with that philosophy. I'm truly impressed with Nandaka, and that's why I'm excited to share this powerful, effective support and nourishment to help you stay vital throughout each day, to bring you many of the core nutrients most everybody's brain, nervous system, and body needs today. Currently, there are over 18,000 5-star reviews on Peak's amazing products, and Nandaka is trusted by some of the top minds in wellness for a reason, including me. These products actually work. Tune in, reconnect, nourish your core. Try Nandaka and feel the shift. Nandaka is a powerful ally, and right now you can get 20% off for life, plus a free starter kit with your first order and a rechargeable frother and helpful glass beaker for mixing your Nandaka exclusively at peaklife.com/Paul Chek. Once again, that's PIQUELIFE.com/PAULCHEK. peaklife.com/Paul Chek for 20% off for life plus a free starter kit with your first order.
Yeah. Super great point. And people often ask me, do you have to have a crisis? Does it have to be, a radical departure? And I can look back to one of my own early inciting incidents, and the breakdown of my body, the first left knee, then right knee, and all the recovery and all the commitment to get back to where I was. And I can see that at the time, those were tragedies in my sporting career. But a little bit like you with your stepdad, if it hadn't been that strong, if I can look back now and see the poetry in it, because those events were so strong that they left me with an undeniable choice to wake up to what else was there, what was ready to rise in me, and in my case was ultimately the coach. But I love that that call at a 7-year-old. Anyone who knows you now can see, wow, you've lived into that vigilance, that protection, that lion was awoken there, and you probably didn't know. I mean, what do you do with that energy? You're not sure, but that was what called you on the journey to who we're talking to today, right?
You become a kickboxer. That's what you do.
Gain skills.
Yeah. And what I want to share as part of what we're dialoguing on right now is that, I've been through lots of heroes' journeys now, but I think as you wake up, clean up, grow up, and show up, you're more sensitive to these guiding influences and pressures much earlier, your radar. And you also learn from the past painful challenges, be it knees getting blown out or trauma in family. And for me, it was oftentimes very bad motorcycle racing accidents that really fucked me up. And you get to the point where you realize that change is actually not as scary as you think it is, because you've already been through major changes. And oftentimes you look back on what scared you and upset you and realize, oh my God, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be where I am now. I wouldn't be in this profession that I love so much. I wouldn't be with this woman that I'm so much more compatible with, or I wouldn't have changed careers. And I mean, I can look back and say, God, I don't know who the hell I would be without these pivotal events, but I certainly would have not done the work that I came to the world to do. And so it helps you actually start having a more mature way of relating with reality, is what I would say.
Big time. And I think what you're describing is, and I notice it in myself, and I also notice it in others who have had many loops of their own version of the hero's journey, as they start to recognize those moments of unpredictable shift, not as something's wrong here, but as, this is a leading indicator that life is opening up a new door here. And if I listen, I might get it at a whisper, and then just, take that step and trust that, instead of going, this isn't what I wanted, so I better resist it with everything I can. I can see now there were whispers from my body, many of them, both the days that I had my biggest injuries. I can hear now quite clearly the voice that said, don't take it easy today, or don't go today. But gotta perform for my sponsors and my coach and make that ranking, and all these reasons sort of stack on top. And so sometimes early in our journey, it requires the sort of blunt hammer to go, you're not getting it at the whisper, so we're going to make it stronger. But as you said, I love that, as we journey through life, we can start to get nuanced in our listening for what's calling.
And I think that's the doorway right there to the inner arts. When I learned how to meditate through the Self-Realization Fellowship when I was 12, but I had a hard time being disciplined about it because I was so engaged and excited by the world around me. But as I went through, having the snake get his skin peeled off a few times, I realized that, like you said, there is indicators. There is the body's talking, the emotions are talking, there's signs, there's handwriting on the wall. But I found that through meditation and Tai Chi and Qigong, where I could, because I'm such a physical guy, I found the moving arts, like medical Qigong, Tai Chi, those styles allowed me to have enough movement that I could put myself into a hypnagogic state very easily and harmonize my breath, my heart rate, my peristalsis, my movement. And then I would go into a flow state but it would not only be a flow state from an athletic perspective, but it would be a higher state of consciousness where I was able to hear the whispers as clear as I can hear your voice right now.
Yeah.
And I then realized I can't, with the amount that I've got going on and the amount of people in my life and responsibilities, I have to make time every day to listen to the voice of my soul inside of me and my inner self and the other influences around us, whether they be nature speaking to us or, and the myriad of ways we're getting guided. But if you're going too fast and you're too trapped in your head, the chances of you creating unnecessary ordeals that can take you on painful hero's journeys that you don't really have to go on are very high until you kind of become better at reading the weather, so to speak.
Yeah, it's really a beautiful, beautiful point. And I love your articulation of, for you, how the physical body and your movement with the physical body has always been a doorway into that quiet, still voice. And I think we have this great quote or whatever that says, listen to the body. But I think as athletes or coaches, oftentimes our interpretation of that is, how many ice baths do they need before I can send them out to run harder or whatever? I'm going to listen to the complaint and then give it the minimum I need to get it back out on the playing field. Whereas what you're describing is probably the true doorway, which is that body is as we move into flow state physically, it's immediate direct access to the deeper flow state that's energetic. And I think it's easy to miss that in our relationship with the body. We think it's this sort of tool that we want to put to use towards the stuff we want to do. Whereas actually it's probably one of the strongest shaman within us, right?
No question. Yeah. It's the garden. It's the shaman. It's the fountain of life. It's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And as a side note, that's one of the sad things about the Abrahamic religions is they've set people up right off the bat that, that you're a sinner, you're fallen, your body is sinful and dirty. And, you see this in Greek philosophy as well. And I think the Western culture has got off on a very, very bad footing in relationship to the body. And I really think that's one of the reasons that people have so many health problems is they don't realize their unconscious is just echoing all this psychodrama that's been carefully crafted to control people, but it doesn't free them. I mean, I've worked with mind-blowing athletes, Cirque du Soleil athletes, multiple Guinness Book of World Record holders, many, many of the top X Game competitors, and, people that take their body to completely different levels. Robbie Madison, who's broken all of Evel Knievel's records. I've rehabbed him from several seriously bad injuries, and I taught him actually how to make contact with his soul to get guidance. And I had the joy of one time he jumped the London Bridge and he did a backflip in the middle of it. And he came back from London and he came to visit me and he said, "Paul, there's something I got to share with you." And interestingly, I had a vision come to me while I was working with him of this beautiful hawk. And I thought, I'm going to paint that for him. And so I did this piece of art for him, which he really to this day cherishes. But I taught him how before he's going to make a jump, because if the wind's just a little off, he can die. These are seriously dangerous things that he does. Yeah. So he came back to me and he said, "Paul," he says, I wanted to drive down here and thank you in person instead of calling you. He said, "I was about to jump the London Bridge. And if I remember right, it was the London Bridge. He's done so many of these things. But he said, I did what you said to do. And I actually taught him how to check in with the elements themselves. And I got told no, not to jump, to wait. I think he said 15 minutes. And he said, I was standing on the bridge with my motorcycle between my legs. And right when I would have been in the air, a huge gust of wind came that would probably have blown me right completely off the target.
Wow.
And he gave me a hug and just said, "Thank you so much. And I always check in with my soul and do what you taught me to do before I jump. And it's probably kept me alive." And so
Wow.
it's just little things like that, you know? I mean, the athlete wants to push their body and use it, like you said, like a tool and force it to do things. But when you get to elite level athletics, oftentimes you can push yourself right into destruction. And I've had to put the pieces together of many that have.
Yeah, and it becomes so nuanced, but I think that story and this distinction is applicable to everyone, and I think it's probably why a lot of the people that we meet and work with, and a lot of us that have had certain hero's journey, call to adventure moments that have been the most uncomfortable, oftentimes come through something that intersects our physical body and stops it or shifts it or breaks it. And at the time, it's the worst thing that ever happened. But I don't know very many people that don't look back eventually and go, wow, that actually was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I can remember, for me, this is a very simple example, but when I had my first major knee reconstruction, then going back to school at Dartmouth in the spring, and the whole campus was covered with snow and ice, and I was on crutches, non-weight bearing for 6 weeks at those days, and I didn't realize how much I rushed in life from one thing to the next, and how I fully would leave my dorm, literally 45 seconds before my class started, and the space between things was just this thing to cross through to get to where I was going next. And suddenly it took me 40 minutes to walk from my dorm room to the class. And I was moving so slow that I started having conversations with myself and with other people, and noticing birds and trees and shifts in the breeze that I never even was aware of. And it was sort of like the first stop move. When we move at a different pace, suddenly the world reveals different doorways to us. And I can see that happens for a lot of people. This call to adventure can be uncomfortable, or can be a break of some sort, and oftentimes some sort of physical shift, because for most of us, it takes something that strong to actually then be open to what's here for me, really. What's the bigger calling here? And as you said, doesn't have to be a crisis, doesn't have to be a breakdown, but early on it can be. So interesting for listeners even to think about what have been moments that they can look back now and go, wow, that was so inconvenient, that was so unplanned, that was so disruptive, but I can actually look back now and see the poetry of it, and I can recognize that that was the beginning of something, not the end.
If you have listened to even one episode of Paul's podcast before, then you will know that he is passionate, and some would say even fanatical, about the quality of the food he eats and where it is sourced from. That is why the Chek household only eats pasture-raised meat, wild-caught fish, and organic produce. And that is why we subscribe to Wild Pastures meat delivery service. Each month, Wild Pastures delivers a box of meat that has been raised by family farmers in the USA using regenerative farming practices. 100% grass-fed and finished beef, pasture-raised chicken, and pasture-raised pork, as well as wild-caught seafood. You can customize the selection in your box, add on extra when you know you will be feeding more people, or change your options each and every month. You might be thinking that this will be too expensive for you, but Wild Pastures' mission is to offer the highest quality meat at the lowest prices, because they want to transform the meat industry. And that means that more people need to be able to choose meat that is raised right. Their pasture-raised animals are part of a natural ecosystem. Their farmers use rotational grazing, practices that mimic nature, and so do not need to use synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, hormones, or antibiotics. This beautiful process doesn't require the external resources, such as massive amounts of GMO grain, required with environmentally depleting conventional methods. And best of all, the meat and fish taste amazing. And for Paul's listeners, Wild Pastures are offering you 20% off your subscription for life, $15 off your first order, and free shipping. Seriously, you can't find a better deal for top quality pasture-raised meat. Go to wildpastures.com/Paul Chek. You don't need a promo code. Just visit wildpastures.com/Paul Chek and start choosing the goodies you will have delivered to you in your first box.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that we have these kind of relationships with ourselves is that the ego is just it's a control freak. It's afraid to not get what it wants, yet it isn't mature enough generally to know what it wants because it's such a superficial aspect of the self. But when we're young, we don't really know ourselves through anything other than the ego, unless you're fortunate, like I was at age 12, to get introduced to a bunch of monks that can take you in. And even with that training, I still banged into myself many times. But I think really, like, we have to have some kind of positive influence or negative, painful influence to crack the shell of the ego, to realize that who we really are is not the programming. It's not the software that we've been unconsciously installed with. And for a lot of people, that journey inward is scary because the sense that the ego has is with spiritual practices of any kind is that it's going to die.
Yeah.
And so it starts throwing up all sorts of reasons why you don't want to meditate or you don't want to do some journaling or whatever, but when what I often say to my patients is, how's that working for you so far? And that's usually the only question I have to ask because you're here.
Yeah, that's right. That's so great. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And in the hero's journey, there is this space between the call and when the heroes cross the threshold into the extraordinary world of the journey. And that ego throwing up stuff is in the archetypal world. It's called it can be referred to, particularly in filmmaking, as the debate. It's
right.
that, we get the invitation, we get the job opportunity, we meet the beautiful soulmate, and then all comes the logic and everything, why this couldn't work and shouldn't work and everything. And it leads us right up to the place where we ultimately, hopefully, trust enough just to take the leap and cross over and go, okay, I'm gonna try, or I'm gonna step in. For me, I guess it was my first day coaching. I was coming back. I was so committed as an athlete. I thought, 2 blown out knees just means I've done them both. I won't do another one. I only got 2 knees. I'm going to keep going. And my coach said, look, why don't you just coach with me for one season? Just so you can stay close to the fire without getting burned. You can train just as hard, and you're with all of the top athletes in the nation, and you're going to get inside their head, and then you come back next year and start your Olympic campaign. And I was like, all right, I'll do that. And so it was just a one, I'll try it, and it wasn't like here's my new calling in life. It was just like okay, begrudgingly, I guess I need some money, might as well. And then it was just a one step. And it was interesting because I can now look and see kind of lunchtime of day one. Already lunchtime day one, I started to feel this dissolving of all the angst and the frustration and the sort of self-absorbed focus that you seem to have as an athlete, and all this sort of stuff started to just dissipate. And I was like, wow, I worked so hard for all of that, but wow, something about this feels so much more natural. Like it just felt like so much more me. And I didn't acknowledge it outwardly at first, but I, as early as that first step, I started to feel something come alive in me that wasn't ever able to if I didn't just go, okay, I'll take a step. I'll take a blind step. And so, when we cross the threshold into the journey, when we answer the call, it's not necessarily I now know my life trajectory. It might just be one, your first lesson with the monks, whatever it was, right? So, and yeah, that's something to think about in that next phase when we start to move into actually being willing to listen and take a step.
I think, too, having worked with so many people in my career now and watching these patterns, is that often the initial phase that led to the knees blowing out for you and the various things for me and everybody else is is actually our initiation into becoming intimate with who it is that we're actually here to help. You know, we have to go on the wounded healer's journey in many instances, especially if you're going to become a coach, a life coach, a therapist, a sport. You got to know what it is that these people are doing and that they're up against, and what's the mental, emotional, and physical challenges. Otherwise, people just become objects that you try to move around with ideas.
Yeah.
But I know for sure if I sent somebody to you with a blown ACL, PCL, whatever, you would not just see that body. You would have empathy and compassion, and you would be able to recognize the signs of an emotional crisis or a mental crisis that could actually be more debilitating than the knee if they buy into it, you know?
Yeah, super cool. I think that lived experience, particularly in the type of work that we're doing, but really any type of leadership work, it's impossible to authentically translate an idea unless it's in you, right?
Right.
Unless
yeah.
you experienced it. So yeah, so that those steps can be shaky, and it can feel initially like a little bit, I'm struggling to keep my head above water. This is a new world. The skills that I used as athlete don't necessarily apply here as coach, but some new things are needing to emerge, and I have to kind of let go. I have to start to let go a little bit of who I was in order to start to be available to not only the skills, but the consciousness of what's coming through in this phase of the journey.
Yeah, the things you're looking for are different in not only each stage of your life, but each stage of the hero's journey. And the meeting, the mentor, I think maybe the first guy that invited you to coach was God's little gift to you to say, hey, here's somebody who has enough empathy for you to open a doorway for you. And so there's a sort of a magical, mysterious occurrence right there. And when I look back through my life, I can see I had a natural attraction to certain people that all ended up turning out to somehow be mentors and give me ways of relating and skills that are still being used today. I'll give you a quick example. I raced motocross with three brothers, the Roller brothers, and their dad was a masterful mechanic. People came from all over to have him build their NASCAR racing engines. And he could make a motorcycle way faster than anybody else's. And so I began
the right last name, Roller.
Yeah. And I began working in his shop. He had an automotive shop, a 3-bay garage, and just the way he did things, and it was perfectly clean. And before we work on any car, we had to clean the engine. And he was a Marine master mechanic in the Navy before he got out. And so he learned a procedure, and he taught me, little things like when you're taking the valves out of a car, how to use a piece of cardboard to number everything so that the rods and the lifters, they need to be seated properly. So if you put them in the wrong hole, you can cause problems, especially when you're running an engine at 8,000 plus RPM in a race. And there were just little things, but, to this day, I ended up building my own race cars. I went to trade school to become a mechanic. I became a welder and did my own roll cages. But just these little things, like, they are now in the way I write manuals. They're in the way I set my gym up. And so I look back, and there's a guy that I only had contact with for a little bit of my life, but he taught me a way of doing things that was inherent to mastery. And I could give you a long string of people like that. And sometimes it was only 3, 4, 5, 6 months of exposure, but I picked up what was some of the ingredients of that person's mastery. And, and I think if there's one message someone can take out of this podcast is whenever you're with someone that has mastery, pay close attention, because research shows it takes about 10,000 hours of committed practice to reach a level of mastery at anything. So the first thing when you're with someone with mastery, like you have with writing or coaching, is that if you're paying attention, you can accelerate the pace at which you gain the skills, the awarenesses, and the discipline to really make something valuable out of yourself. Not only for you, for your own sense of self-esteem, but valuable for the world.
Are you tired of feeling stuck? Whether you're stuck in your health, your career, or your daily routine, getting out of a rut can feel overwhelming. But here's an opportunity to escape that rut, to break out and transform your life from the inside out. No matter what you feel has been holding you back, you can make a lasting change and reach your physical and mental goals and dreams. The Chek Academy is the answer, bringing you fulfillment and purpose with step-by-step assistance, guidance, and learning. You'll be equipped to improve your health and, if you choose, guide others through their transformation too. Because the Academy schedule is designed to accommodate those with full-time jobs, you can make this life-changing leap while still managing your regular day-to-day commitments. In year one, you'll gain tools and strategies that really work, not quick fixes that are not sustainable. Starting with Paul's book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, which helps to build healthy habits, you'll grow on this foundation in Holistic Lifestyle Coach Level 1 online. Integrated Movement Science Level 1 online, and the prerequisites will show you how to exercise with confidence and precision. Chek mentors and faculty are there to guide and support you as you progress, as well as the community of your fellow students in the Chek Academy. The fall enrollment is closing soon, so get your application submitted now. Go to chek.group/Chek Academy. Don't wait any longer to make your vision your reality. Come join the Chek Academy and become your absolute best self. Apply now at chek.group/Chek Academy.
So much. And it's interesting, I think, when we, even the idea of the hero's journey, oftentimes people pigeonhole it into this kind of superhero, I'm on my own, charting my path, doing my thing. But you point to something so fundamental that as soon as the hero crosses that threshold and suddenly they start to break down, they actually start to break down that I'm on my own piece. And that phase of the early phase of the journey in filmmaking, it's called tests and allies.
Right.
Because the hero gets tested in ways they haven't. And then they meet unlikely allies and they start to realize the interconnectedness of their steps in a way that they never otherwise could have. And, you know, I was thinking about our first meeting in the AIS way back when, and I was a young Olympic coach. And I really got there because I was a strong athlete that could also articulate a little. But I was younger than most of my athletes, and they're Australians, and they punch massively above their weight in winter sport. But we were looking for something to bring to the table that was different than what all the other nations were doing in all of their training camps. And we met. You know, I had a confident face, but inside I was like, shit, I'd never coached at the Olympics before. And I don't really know how to prepare my athletes physically. And you just showed up like Strider in the Lord of the Rings with the hobbits. And you know, as we talked about before we jumped on the recording, you know, I don't know, maybe we had 3 hours together total that week. But I still can remember most of the principles and exercises that you landed with me and the group. And it changed the approach to physical preparation for the Winter Olympic Institute forever. It was just like, right? and so that's an example of an ally that I didn't expect. I didn't come looking for you. I didn't know I needed it even. And so I was like, ooh, wow, there's a portal here of mastery. I'm gonna open my synapses as much as possible to take in what I can while we're together.
I think too, it's helpful. Breaking out is also breaking in. And I created a concept long ago because I saw a lot of athletes could get quite traumatized by losing. You know, they had such high pressure on themselves and expectations of themselves. And I've even seen people doubt whether they should continue in their sport, even at the most elite levels. I mean, some of these people are unbelievably insecure, even though they've got masterful titles and trophies and, championships behind them. But, I used to always say to them, look, get rid of the concept of loser and convert it to learner. Instead of I'm a loser, I'm a learner. I would say, look, whenever someone could beat me in a boxing match or a kickboxing match, they're the first person I wanted to hug because I wanted to make damn sure it was hard to do. And if you could do it, I knew I'd met somebody with just as much mettle as I had or more. And so I became their student, and I knew that I'd learned the lesson when I could beat them.
Yeah. That's epic. I love that. Yeah, we often say in the retreats that we run, which are basically sit inside this framework over an 8-day period, it's powerful to get to a point where the participants start to realize that in the tests and allies phase, the tests are the allies. That my greatest tests become my deepest allies because they teach me the most, and they ultimately become gifts to the journey. Even though at the time it seems like they're kicking my ass on the, in the boxing ring.
Yeah, it's like school teachers. When I always ask my students, which school teachers had the greatest impact on your life? The ones that you liked or the ones that drove you crazy or that you even hated? And almost everybody says, oh, when I look back on it, it's the ones I hated because they were the ones pushing me, to get out of my laziness. And I had a 7th grade math teacher that I just did not like. He was just mean. And this is back in the day, this guy used to whip us with a 3-foot long wooden ruler, and unfortunately for me, I was quite testy, so there was many days I came home with swollen welts on my back of my butt and my thighs. And
oh my God.
And he's the guy that said to me, Paul, because I used to say, I don't like math. I'm not good. He said, no, you keep telling yourself that. He said, but let me tell you, one day you're going to really wish you had developed general math skills. And I've told this story before, but real quickly. So I'm in the Army. I get out of basic training. I get out of jump school, and I have to go to advanced individual training in Fort Eustis, Virginia for electronics school. We show up. We get out of the bus, we're in formation, and then all of a sudden they started calling out names, and they said, if we call your name out, come stand over here. And I just had this deep intuitive feeling, whoever gets called right now, it's not good. I just had a sense. And then they said, Chek. And I went, oh my God, what the hell is going on? And then after they finished calling out about a dozen people, the sergeant turned and pointed to us. He said, you see these guys over here? These are the dumb shits of the group. They're not smart enough to go to electronics school. So guess where you guys are going? You're going to go to math school 8 hours a day until you can pass your entry exam to be smart enough to work on a Cobra helicopter. So I had to spend 2 friggin' months, 8 hours a day in math school. And the punchline is Mr. Hirschkorn standing at my desk telling me, Paul, if you don't master your basic math skills, one day you're going to resent it. And I'm like, that fucking pissed me off because I should have listened to the damn guy.
He was trying to be an ally, right? Come on, buddy.
So that's the point, right? I thought he was the bad guy, but he was the ally, something inside of him knew to try to sharpen me up a bit,
That's so great. I really love that. And Hollywood does a great way of kind of like blowing this, like exaggerating it to the farcical. But basically, all the bad guys, if we look at, from above, we see that the bad guys is what pulls out the good stuff in the good guy. Like if the bad guys weren't there, the good guy wouldn't be tested, or the good gals or the group wouldn't be tested to the point that they actually surfaced with who they really were. And
yeah.
We hate them, as an audience, but actually they're really important, right?
Yeah. Well, all you got to do is get married, and that'll be the process for you. I tell people, you don't need a church, temple, or synagogue. All you got to do is get married, and everything you need for spiritual development's right there 24 hours a day.
That's awesome.
There's your spiritual practice, and it's the real one. And then the
it.
next level is having kids. And then you find out who the real teachers are.
You meet the Buddha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think marriage and kids kind of, in a way, brings us to the what I would call phase 5 in the journey. So we meet our heroes in the ordinary world. They hear or receive a call to adventure, whether they want it or not. They muster the courage to take a blind leap and cross over into the journey. And then they experience this whole phase of kind of having to let go of skills that aren't relevant anymore and learn new ones, meet allies, learn and grow to survive in the new world.
Yeah.
And each of us would have patterns like this in relationships, in schools, in jobs, where we were in our normal life, we got an opportunity, or something happened, we crossed over, then we're in the new experience. And as soon, right about the time that we get comfortable in the new experience, or we're keeping our head above water, normally what happens is we come to this place, and in film, it's the midpoint. And your James Camerons and stuff, you can run their films on a stopwatch, and it's literally right in the middle. The heroes will come to a place where they've got enough, their eyes are open enough to the new world that they kind of know what they're dealing with, and they've learned to survive there physically. But they reach the point where it's the last chance for them to go back to who they were.
Right.
And if they take one more step, they can no longer go back. They may one day return, but the one more step kind of takes the seesaw that they've been climbing up and goes, and now they're committed to, the only way they can return is to go through and really follow the journey all the way to the fundamental, deeper reason why they came up on it in the first place. And so this point of true commitment, we get to when a dating relationship becomes a marriage, or when when a couple give birth to a child. It's like we were dabbling here. This was fun. We learned lots of stuff, but we cross over, and suddenly, whoa. This is real. This is genuine commitment, and it's different than just testing.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Hegel's stages of process?
Maybe
thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
Yeah, a little bit.
So what you're really describing is Hegel's antithesis. You think you have an idea, you're going to invent a new widget or whatever. You got pie in the sky ideas of making millions. Then you find out the materials don't hold up. And then next thing you know, you're hitting this antithesis stage. And that's kind of like the halfway mark in a marathon, where people start talking themselves out of finishing it. But that's where a good mentor really is important, because if they know how to tap into you, they can get rid of the fear, the insecurity, and the little self, and fertilize the bigger self.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. The one thing on that, though, I think Hegel got wrong, because I believe the Om cycle is the foundation of all creation. AUM_. I awaken. Ooh, I'm dreaming. I'm falling asleep. But then there's the underscore, which is the beginning, the rest before the beginning of a new cycle. And so Hegel, being a Western mind, just goes AUM, no underscore. So thesis, antithesis, synthesis. But then the Western culture, before they even have rested and recovered and redreamed, they just jump into the next thing, and they have a habit of reproducing the same mistakes and the same ideas over and over again. But what I've found is that sometimes this is where that inner work is so important, is when you're facing challenges, you need to put the underscore in there and sit quietly enough within yourself to find the clarity and find your heart and find the inner voice that's not the voice that's talking in your head. It's the voice that's talking to you from a deeper place. And then you take advantage of the redreaming the opportunity right there. And you say, oh, you know what? Maybe next time I need to not try to make this such a cheap item. I might not sell as many, but I'll produce a better product. I'll have to raise the price, But, otherwise you just keep doing the same shit over and over and buying more and more expensive insurance as people start filing complaints against you, metaphorically. So I think the point I was bringing up is that what you've just described would be Hegel's antithesis.
Yeah.
And then that we have to keep going to get to synthesis, which is inherently mastery.
Interesting. I think it's right on the money too, because in kind of modern mythology, that midpoint really marks the significant shift from the outer journey to the inner journey, right? So from the thing that the hero thinks that they're going for, I'm going to shift from being an athlete to a coach, to the inner journey, which is, wow, what's actually waking up inside of me that is going to permeate the rest of my existence, and how I breathe and how I move and who I relate with. And that shift, I haven't heard you describe the Om in this context before, but it's so relevant. And this point of true commitment, it might look like a physical step, but it's a step in, right? It's a step directly in.
And that in the classic hero's journey, as Joseph de Campbell described it, that's why the hero needs a mentor to guide them to get supernatural aid. There's often a need for supernatural aid, which for a shaman can be plant spirits, tree spirits, divas, guides, gods, religion's full of them. But I think that the supernatural aid that the hero really needs to guidance from the mentor to get is the soul, is the spirit within, the self, really, because in my studies of the self, it includes the unconscious, it includes the highest self, it includes the soul, and the ego is what it's living through. It's what it's using as a growth opportunity. But the paradox of it is all our past life wisdom, and actually the wisdom of all that is, ever has been and ever will be, is in the supernatural within us. So I think a lot of people get turned off by people mentioning supernatural aid in the hero's journey because they think it's woo-woo. Yeah. But actually the real supernatural aid is the supernatural aid that created you to begin with, that dreamed you into existence.
That's right. It's cosmic, but it couldn't be closer. It's closer than your breath, right?
Yeah, it's making your heart beat. It's what's making you breathe. It's really what's taking the hero's journey.
I was leading a retreat with some founders that I work with, and we were mapping their journey so far as a startup company, a startup tech company. And they paused on the mountain to talk about where they were. And I laid out the framework for them. And I could see that for them, they were really in the test and allies phase. They'd heard the call to do this thing. They stepped into it. They gathered the team. They got their funding. They were going for it. They were, being tested and stretched. And I asked them, where do you guys think you are on the journey? And they said, we are right in the innermost cave. We're like past the point of true commitment. We're all in. We're so in deep. And I just had to quietly just say, well, that's interesting. Let's just see how the next 6 months play out. And
that was a polite way to say it. See, that's why a coach has got to be a coach.
That's right. That's exactly right. Because if I said, no, you're not, they would have said, he just doesn't get us. So I just went, okay, let's just see what happens. And, their very next step, like a month later, they had to commit at a deeper level, we're all in financially and everything. And then the absolute bottom dropped out of the whole thing, and they lost their funding, and they were they got brought to a place of total let go that they never ever knew that they needed to be. But what it did for these founders, because the work that they're doing is really beautiful in service of human health, and it brought them right. They got stripped of all the great stuff and the logos and the posters and the brand and everything, and they were like, wow, we might need to actually let this go and walk away. And when they got there, they got exposed, reintroduced to the part of themselves that sat at the very, very center of why they started the journey in the first place.
Yeah. Amen.
And they told me later, wow, it was like clockwork. The moment we sat with each other and went, you know what, it's okay. We've grown so much. We can let this go. Let's just let it go. Like 4 hours later, they got a call from their next investor that said, you're right on the cusp of actually why you came to do this. Let's lean into this next phase. And it kind of catapulted them to the next level, but they can see that they never would have received that next external boost without actually letting go of all the things they thought it meant and coming to the deep inside.
Yeah. One thing that resonates in my head forever when I face challenges is Buddha's statement that there's only one universal law. It's called the law of impermanence. And there's the ego wants to, build its castles and have its pie in the sky, but doesn't want to face the realities of what it takes to do that. So, for me, it's always been, that's the turning shit into flowers. Sometimes you got to just let go. And it's I find in my own life and in the lives of many people I've worked with, it's only when the letting go comes that the real magic can emerge. Because until we have to let go, we're trying to guide the process from the shallowest parts of ourselves, not realizing what we're doing.
We're trying to curate it, right?
Yeah. But once we have to find our center and our core, which can take a lot of tears to get to, which can be cleansing and purifying in themselves, then we're actually a far better custodian of whatever wants to move through us.
It's really interesting. It's so in the last 10 years, I've spent quite a bit of time in Tonga swimming with.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I saw your videos. Awesome.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I bring groups of people, oftentimes leaders that have done a lot or achieved a lot. We go out on these little boats, and with the intention to have a genuine, real exchange with humpback whales, these ancient 50 million year old wise beings. And the people that come, I have to sort of let this unfold, but oftentimes there's some people that kind of have a checklist of the kind of experience that they want to have and the way they've always operated. And even though we talk about sticking together and we talk about holding hands and we talk about swimming slow and moving at the whale's pace and taking our time, when we pull up the boat and there's a humpback mama and a baby 100 meters that way, they can't help but get in and all their default programming switches on, and they just want to swim to the whale and before it swims away. And over the couple days, what they get to experience is that the way I show up impacts the experience that I'm about to have. And sometimes even the way I reach towards something, it pushes it away. And what happens is as they start to let go and they get back in the boat and they're like, oh, did you see it? Oh, did you get a picture? And what happened? And this happens over a series of days, and they get sort of stripped of their roles and their job title and their emails and everything else. And they start to just relax on the boat and look up and notice, wow, that bird's cool. And look at the water. Look at how beautiful that water is. And actually, it's just so beautiful being here. Just being here. Whales are a bonus. Doesn't really matter. This is so cool. As soon as they genuinely get to that place, why don't we pour a cup of tea? All of a sudden, there'll be a whale that's literally, 5 meters from the boat. And it's like somehow on an energetic space, those beings seem to operate in some sort of synchronic order where they can feel the let go. They can feel when people say, let's stop trying. Let's stop pushing. Let's stop striving and reaching. Let's just let the moment unfold. And for a lot of these people, it's a powerful realization of the power of surrender. Like it's not a giving up, it's a letting go that allows the magic that you think you need to strive for to show up. And
yeah, very true. I see that, in all my years of Tai Chi. I'd be somewhere, in the woods or on the beach, and I might be wound up from work or whatever. And I'm there, and I start and I close my eyes. And then about 15 or 20 minutes later, when I get real deep in, all of a sudden I feel a presence beside me, and I'll turn around. There's 30 seagulls in a circle around me, or there's, a snake or a lizard or, 20 different creatures. And it's the same with plant medicine ceremonies too. I've had just wild experiences working with wound out executive types and people that are just buzzed out of their mind. But once they get into the medicines and they realize they're going to be okay and they relax, all of a sudden squirrels start coming around. I remember I was doing a ceremony with a lady who was going through a midlife crisis, and we were right behind my house next to my waterfall. I have a beautiful big 15-foot waterfall because the house was blasted out of the side of a mountain. So the waterfall runs down the rock face. And, we were quite deep in and just really relaxing. The sun was shining. And then all of a sudden I opened my eyes. I felt something near us, and I looked, and it was like a 20-inch long dragon lizard. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a long tail with the dragon head on it. And it was literally like 6 inches from her foot, and it was just hanging out. And I thought, any second, this thing going to climb up on her and scare the hell out of her. So I said, hey, slowly look toward your feet. And she looks, and this thing looks her right in the eyes. And she's like, oh my God. Then about 100 hummingbirds came to drink from the little pond at the bottom of the waterfall. Then squirrels showed up. And within an hour, we literally had like 60 or 70 creatures all around us, hanging out with us like they were just digging it, But it just like you say, those beings that live in the Tao know when we're in the Tao. And they also know that we're dangerous when we're not in the Tao. And it's such a great, like, I've learned so much from Tai Chi, Qigong, and walking meditations, and just noticing how everything around me changes the way it relates to me when I get to the place where I can have no need for reflex reactions or fear or head fucking myself or whatever, and they're like, oh, welcome to the party.
They're just waiting. They're like, come on, you can do it. Come on, you can be it. Just like, they're all like right on the edge of the forest.
Yeah.
Just wait. Your description of it is so gorgeous, because it's in that moment, really, for the hero, this is what we call the innermost cave, right? Where we think it's a complete let go, and it's scary in there. But when we really go in there, and when we really take the time to honor that space and sit in this darkness, sit in the stillness, let it all settle, what we get is a glimpse of who we really are, right? And it's effortless, and it's so much more connected and powerful in its interconnectedness than we could ever be times a million by us just doing more and pushing more on our own. Let's make this happen, right?
It reminds me of one of the things that Joseph Campbell said that stuck with me from the first time I read it. It stuck like glue. And he said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you need the most. And that's where we really have a transition point. Do I want to be ego guided, or do I want to be soul guided? Because if I'm going to go in this cave and it could have poisonous snakes and spiders and bats, I need the guidance of my soul, because my soul ultimately is created by the whole universe and is one with all these things. And so if we can let go to the heart or the soul or the spirit within us and just trust and listen, we can navigate that cave and find the treasure. But if we go in there like a young, dumb, and full of cum and start throwing rocks around and making noise and telling jokes, then we irritate the snakes and the bats, and they do want to come get us,
That's it. That's totally it. That quote is so gorgeous. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek or that you need. Because I think our modern perception of going into the cave is that it's fucking hard work. I'm going to be digging through layers of shit and whatever, like made up stories we have about it makes us feel like we got to go in with our fists up and our torch out. But actually right in there is, in the very deep depths, is actually the greatest treasure. It's just waiting for us. And we don't have to do anything to prove that we deserve it or anything. It's just there, just on the other side of what feels known and comfortable, right?
Yeah, amen. It's what I really enjoy is when I get to have conversations like this that are so important for younger people. And when I say younger, I don't just mean chronologically, I mean spiritually. It doesn't matter how old your body is. You can still be very teenage-like and childlike in your mind. But when you get to hear it from people that have really walked this path and had to confront themselves and decide, who am I going to become now? Am I going to just have a 20 more years of pity party, or am I going to see what Great Spirit can offer me? I think for younger people to hear this and know that cave is safe to walk in if you walk softly and try not to leave too many footprints, so to speak, and be like your company, quiet and alert but present. It gives people the confidence that they can make it through these challenging times that life always delivers. But in life, it doesn't matter how perfect your life is. We always have to remember that we're in like a Russian doll reality. Like you and I can be having the greatest time in the world, but then COVID comes and we have to deal with a socio-cultural crisis.
Yeah.
So we always have to, once we find the Tao of ourselves, then the next level of the hero's journey is, how do I hold on to the Tao when it comes to a family crisis or a crisis at school, or a crisis with the healthcare system, or a crisis with justice or sovereignty, and I'm just super grateful that I've had these experiences, because they've taught me, one of the things I learned as a paratrooper is never lose your military composure. Because if you lose your composure, then you might end up actually killing the guys that are here to help you, not realizing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Or make mistakes that get you killed. And when they put you through training, they put you in many situations to make that very real to you. In other words, they give you a chance to hurt yourself.
Totally.
But my point is just that I'm just grateful for everybody listening, who hasn't had the kind of experiences that we've had, to maybe gain the confidence from a couple of guys that have been on a path for a while, to know this is how you go about it.
Yeah.
We can't have the experience for others, but we can give them an awareness of what the signs are and the indicators are of where you're at in the journey. So you have some recollection from this conversation, or the kind of books that we're talking about, like your book, especially with the exercises and all that you give. Once you can see where you're at in the journey, I think it helps stabilize you, because you're not in such a complete mystery anymore. It's not like you're not walking totally in the black. You're walking in the dark, but you know where you're at in a process that's inherent to the life process itself.
That's exactly right. And I think that we all have examples and experiences, and even just on a daily level, of this cycle. It's running through us all the time. And we know that feeling at one level or another, on a personal level, of what it means to actually genuinely surrender something or go into the cave of something. And I think, as you pointed out, when we are willing to walk that path as an individual, we start to build reference points of, wow, on a personal level, I went into that space and it was totally unknown. I had every synapse in my body firing to kind of try to see in the dark. I couldn't. So I took a deep breath instead of pushing and running out. I just took a deep breath. And then suddenly my eyes started to adjust to what was actually in the space. And I started to see, whoa, this is exactly where I need to be. Every time we have even a micro version of that, we build these little reference points that then, as you said, operate on a social level in a family. When I see someone else going through that moment, I don't go, oh shit, everything's, Josh, my son, is in the innermost cave as a music producer because he just lost the record deal that he thought he had. Instead of going, oh no, I can go, oh, wait a minute. Okay, what if instead of reacting and firing back emails, and we just took a breath and went, oh, okay, what's actually inside this moment that we wouldn't see if we were fighting against it? And you said, when something happens to our township or our country or the society as a whole, we have just a lens through which we can see the moments that are unfolding. Doesn't solve everything, but it gives us a context. So I know for me, this piece around surrender, the innermost cave, now I just notice when I'm holding something and I catch myself and I go, okay, wait, what if I just let that go? Suddenly, it's a leading indicator for me. When I'm at a point of needing surrender, I can go, oh, wow, I got to have my eyes wide open because there's a treasure in here that if I'm fighting against it, I'm not going to see it.
Yeah, one thing that I learned from studying Arnold Mendel's work, and he's written some excellent books. He's passed away not too long ago, but he was just an amazing guy. He was a Jungian analyst and had deep mastery of mathematics and quantum physics and could weave many things. He wrote a great book called The Shaman's Body and several other books that I've studied. But one of the things he said also stuck with me. He said, there is order in chaos. You just have to learn to see it. And I think that's part of growing up spiritually is when you get into a situation of chaos, you have to shift to second sight. You got to calm yourself, center yourself, relax. And, it's like when I'm doing art therapy or an analysis on people's healing art, like a mandala, I don't just look at it and say, oh, look, there's a bird or there's a tree or there's a car. I sit back from it to where I can drink it in with my whole being. And I let go of focusing and I ask the question, what is this person's soul saying to me? And what's happening inside of me? What intuitions rise up? What areas of my body tighten? What is my breathing doing? Like I can actually fuse into that person through the vibrational signature in the art. And then I can actually look at a lot of these pieces of art that are painted by people that are going through a lot of, really challenging times, like a heart disease or cancer or a midlife crisis. And I can allow myself to see what they can't see in the chaos that they're painting. And they always say, how in the hell did you see that? And I say, well, the first thing you got to do is stop trying to see it. You have to let it show itself to you.
Yeah.
And that's something that I learned from Mendel is just, there's always order in chaos. And we see that in creation myths. Many of the creation myths from around the world say that the world emerged from a sea of chaos. But there you see something so beautiful and so capable of supporting life for which you don't see anything like it for a long, long ways in mythological context came out of chaos. And so the fact that we're here in a universe the size that we're in with the probabilities that are almost infinite, the odds of us sitting here having this conversation in the organization and creation of a universe are like trillions to one that this could happen. But there you see that you got to let go to the process and that the chaos is actually not chaos. It's just a different way of creating that we're not used to.
Yeah. I think it's a really great distinction, particularly because I would imagine a lot of your listeners also work with other people and they might be coaches, might be facilitators or healers or therapists. And you're describing is your willingness in a session with someone who's doing a mandala, your willingness to go on the journey and actually to courageously go into the innermost cave of that session, really.
Yeah.
And then because you're willing to go there, you are able to see, sometimes you might be one step ahead of her in the cave, and you might catch a glimpse of the treasure a little before she does. And so just be able to shine a little light on it, right? Or see the perspective that she might not have. And I think that's one of the great responsibilities. And it comes back to what you said earlier about having a lived experience in the work that we do with humans, having gone on and continuing to go on our own journeys. It gives us the ability to walk shoulder to shoulder with people that we're helping or that we want to help. And not stand from the pulpit or not stand from the beach and going, just go in the cave. You're going to be fine. Here are the 5 principles of what's going to keep you safe.
If you get bit by a shark, tell me about it.
Totally. But
I'll send the Coast Guard. They'll be here in an hour. Hang in there.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think it's one of the things that makes your work so special, and something that I really aim towards and value in my own work is you're living the myth as we speak right now, and every moment it's unfolding, and you're willing every morning to wake up and to sit in your own cave until the chaos reveals itself in order with that still quiet voice, and then carry what that little elixir is, or big elixir, back out into the real world. And it's kind of where we get to. So the heroes we meet them in their ordinary world. We're called to leave our ordinary world and cross a threshold into the unknown. And we got to navigate tests and build new skills and meet allies till we hit that sort of point of true commitment. And then we cross over and we lean in, we go from busyness to devoted, and then that brings us from the outer journey right into the inner journey and into what the myth calls the innermost cave, or the cave, or whatever. And it's only in there. And you described it with the Joseph Campbell quote that we actually have a glimpse of and can meet the elixir of really who we are. And with that elixir in the great, sort of the filmic hero's journeys, that discovery is what has the hero then charge back and return. It's the moment where Aragorn is literally in a cave, and someone says, leave the rebel behind and become the king you came here to be. And it's his willingness to embody who he really is that then instantly enables him to move out and conquer the bad guys. But for each of us, it's that glimpse of that it's not even a glimpse, a willingness to surrender long enough to see who we really are. It gives us the power then to go back, to return, but with the lesson, with the essence of who we are. And that's the sort of moving towards the final stage of the journey is the return, is bringing that essence back into the world in a meaningful, powerful way and sharing it. And
that's also, Chip, that's also hard evidence that the soul grows. That's another ring on the tree of self, but it's not a physical growth. It's a spiritual growth. It's the growth of one's consciousness, one's sense of true self, one's reassurance that they're part of something big and meaningful and beautiful and powerful, and somehow magically and mysteriously you depend on it, but somehow magically it's depending on you. And I think that's something so important for people to learn, because these days with all the social media and AI drunkenness, and so many people are, and all the philosophical confusion and the scientific materialism and techno-scientific fascism, a lot of people are caught in flatland. And when you don't have a sense of connection to the spirit of yourself, to the soul of yourself, you can lose sight that there's something growing inside of you that's learning and growing and becoming. And that ultimately is the consciousness that's growing inside of you. It's the the ability to see the connections that were once invisible. But it's kind of like if you used to use Roundup in your backyard and you thought that was the thing to do to kill the weeds, but all of a sudden you listened to Paul Stamets talk about the fungal network and you realized what the hell you were doing with that Roundup, it can change the whole way you relate to your garden and even to yourself, because the more you learn about nature, the more you learn about yourself. And I think, my personal belief for many reasons is all we can take with us when we die is what we've become. And if we don't enter the cave and go on the hero's journey, then we kind of like stalemate our lives. We're like stale toast instead of like, I know when I die, I'm going to be totally cool with it because I have fucking lived as full on as I could, and I try to every day. And I think there's nothing more painful than dying and realizing you haven't really lived because you were too busy being distracted by, the things that the Industrial Revolution convinced you were important so it could suck the money out of your wallet forever.
It's so true. And I really love that that return, the return with the elixir, that glimpse of who you really are, the realization that the Roundup that you've been putting on your garden is killing the very things you want to breathe life into.
Yeah.
The next steps you take are actually quite important because they give that new expanded consciousness a chance to ground itself, right?
Yes.
So get back out into the garden and you go, wow, I just learned this brand new stuff about everything that's going to help the mycelial network that's going to ultimately, and I better just do that next round of Roundup. Then we've missed the opportunity. But the cool part, as you were kind of leaning towards, is that what can happen is we get the glimpse, we have the Paul Stamets moment, and then we just want to come and tell everybody, using Roundup, and maybe we're still using it a little bit, but we're just telling everybody this is what I just learned, and we can't do this anymore. We're actually the work is just to go back and just start here. Here's my little garden. I'm gonna this morning I'm gonna take time to sit with it and water it and get some compost from my kitchen, and what can I give it that's going to help, and listen, and the steps can be small. They don't need to be like change the world all at once. It's right here in the garden.
And then you realize one day, if you're fortunate to do the research like I did, that Mother Nature has a very special plan and that each of those weeds is actually growing to mineralize the soil with exactly what's missing. And you're like, oh boy, have I fucked that up. Here, I thought all these weeds were bad, but they're actually coming to heal the soil, and it's like, and isn't that just a great metaphor for our lives? Our weeds, our challenging spots, our personality glitches and quirks and addictions and fetishes turn out to be the weeds that are actually in some way directing our attention to how to balance the soil,
It's so true. And it's not the topic of this conversation, but the book that has come out recently, the Seed
Oh,
of
right.
Dreams.
Yes. Yeah, that's beautiful.
And there's actually a whole chapter that's about the gift of weeds, because it's a little bit like the tests and allies, a little bit like that 7th grade math teacher. Those things that we just want to eradicate from our life are often the most nutritious, right? And I remember I was in a conversation with one of the permaculture founders from Australia, and he was saying people don't realize that, I think he said 70% of the weeds that we spray hold the most nutritional value for humans than any other plant that we would try to grow. And they're sitting there and they're helping the soil and they're balancing everything else. And just because it's not what I planted, I want to get rid of it. Right.
Well, one of the funny things about weeds is the reason they grow so fast is so they can help us quicker.
Totally. Yeah, that's right. And it's for those who are actual gardeners out there, you'll know this, and I experience it. It's a great reminder for me in life is that, when it rains on everything. And so, maybe I've planted a row of kale and lettuce and whatever else. when it rains, the kale and lettuce get watered, but so do the weeds, and the weeds grow faster, right? And so they give us a chance to look at them, examine them, appreciate them, and then recognize which ones are here that we should actually just make space for. Really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. What's the next phase that you wanted to get into?
Well, so really we're touching on it now. So when we've gone on the journey and we've taken ourselves and we've allowed ourselves to surrender into the innermost cave, we will invariably receive the elixir, and the elixir is different than the call. Oftentimes, the call to adventure can be a superficial. It might be a crisis moment, but it's a physical, superficial doorway.
Yeah.
And the elixir is the deeper answer to why we really came. In a very simple kind of example, someone invites me to go have breakfast with them. The call, I say, okay. And I go about the journey to go meet them. And I get to the cafe, I'm right on time. And then they send me a text and say, oh, fuck, I can't make it. Something just came up. And now I'm at the cafe. I had other stuff I could have done, but here I am. And I got to just go, oh, well, all right. I guess that plan's out the window. And then suddenly someone sits down next to me that I start a conversation with. That's actually the real conversation I need to have that day.
Right.
And so we have these cycles running through us the whole time, but this phase in the journey right now is that when we have claimed the elixir of the journey that we've been on, our biggest responsibility is then to return to the ordinary world with that elixir, to find a way to bring it back, and not to preach it, not to tell everybody what happened, but actually to live it and be the embodied expression of the gift that we got from the journey. And that's the kind of like final phase of movement in the hero's journey, is how do we share what I've learned with the world? And, you're a wonderful example, because you're constantly discovering new elixirs in your own journey, and then finding ways to translate them into how you work with people, what you share at the next session, and sometimes it's an articulation. Sometimes it's a nuanced shift to how you work with someone. And sometimes it's just a way of being as you enter the grocery store, but finding the way to embody and express that which we discover, that who we really are, is kind of the final big step in the journey, the return.
Yeah. And there's another aspect to that I want to share that I've experienced countless times. And it actually can be a bit confronting for some people, and it can even be challenging for a person like me that is very skilled at creating things and taking projects from beginning to end. But it's what I call the weight of knowledge, because when you go through the hero's journey and you're coming down the mountain, you've learned something for real. If you're coming down the mountain, you've been through an ordeal. You've had to call on the supernatural aid, be it within or around. And you now have bigger eyes and bigger ears, and you're more tapped in. In other words, the birds come around you quicker because they know who you are now. And it's impossible not to come down the mountain and look around at the ordinary world and go, oh my God, these people don't realize what they're doing or what they're not doing. That's, for example, is why I had to write my book, How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, because after 10,000 patients with the same problems, I realized, these people don't know how to eat. They don't even know what water is or how to drink it. They don't know how to exercise. I mean, they don't know the most fundamental things. And without that knowledge, you get pushed into some very uncomfortable hero's journeys, often well before you're ready, or even your family is ready. And I thought, I cannot bear the pain of watching all these people self-destruct. So I spent 3 years writing How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and taking a synthesis of everything I'd learned in my own life and as a therapist to help people and say, hey, for $25, you can avoid having to see somebody like me. And if I hadn't have done that, I would have had to carry the burden in myself of knowing that I had a master key to freedom that a lot of people needed. And that can almost be a karmic pain, you know, like if I don't give this away, what does it say about me? And this kind of goes to a spiritual example is in Buddhism, you know, there's kind of two schools of thought. In one school of thought, once you realize it's all Maya, then you choose nirvana, you get the hell out of Dodge, and you don't worry about anybody. You just say, look, it's all God masturbating and playing this big game. You don't have to play the game. You can just go into no mind or bliss or whatever your imagination conceives of God to be. But then the other one makes a vow to reincarnate until all souls are enlightened, because they realize it is God that's trapped in the game and God's fallen asleep and needs help waking up to its true self. And so it's kind of like that. You come down the mountain and you can either say, okay, I've got it. Now I can check out of the game. I've got my money. I've got my safety and security. Screw these guys. Let them battle it out. Or you say, I can't watch people be in this kind of pain and get misled and coerced and bullied. Like, you know, that's how I felt when COVID was coming on. Because with my training as a soldier, I recognized we were in a form of warfare that most people had no idea was happening. And I'm like, I'm going to risk everything to wake people up. And so the point is that anybody that really is coming down the mountain authentically will have to deal with the weight of knowledge. And there you have to make a legitimate spiritual choice. And it tells you a lot about who you are.
It's a really important piece, and it sits at the essence of two things you shared. Sits at the absolute essence of the return. You know, firstly, your description, you've probably watched a fair few and spoken with people that have had NDEs or near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And
I'm one of them.
Yeah, that's, you know, one of the great quite common responses when those that have crossed over to the other side come back into their physical body is anger at the surgeon for bringing them back, or
yeah,
they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why did
you just fucked here? Everything up.
Totally.
You're too good.
Yeah. And I think that in any time, it's good to recognize anytime we go on a journey of any nature that's deep and authentic, we're going to come back into the ordinary world altered, and it's not going to fit like we might have thought it did when we left.
Yeah.
And we might suddenly, oftentimes you don't even realize how deep you've gone on the journey until you come back. And suddenly that person that you felt so close to for your whole life up to that point, or that friend you could always talk to about everything, suddenly you're like, wow, I'm in a different place right now. And so that it's good just to know that, and to, have a bit of compassion for yourself, knowing that part of going on deep and authentic journeys of your soul is that you're going to, when you return to the ordinary world, it might feel odd. It might feel small. It might feel fucked up and wrong.
Yeah.
That's also part of the journey. And then that tips us into the second point, which you made is the sense of responsibility that might rise up in you and be born from that discomfort that you feel. And in the archetypal form, the journey, it comes with very deep responsibility.
It does.
It's a privilege. It's a privilege to go on that journey up the mountain and out into the ocean and swimming with whales or whatever it is. And part of that privilege comes with the role. I mean, this is my philosophy, to find a way to translate that who you've become back into the world. And sometimes it's, as you said, knowledge. And I would imagine you would have so many moments in your journey where you see the gap between what you can see and the lens through which, not even what everybody else sees, but the lens through which other people are seeing.
Oh, yeah.
Where do I start?
That's why I say to my students all the time, be very careful if you use the words, I know that with me. Because by the time you graduate as an IMS 5, you will begin to see what I see right now. And you might be embarrassed at how many times you told me you knew that when it was dead clear to me you didn't know that at all. And then that's what we call the ego defending its insecurities about doing the hero's journey to really know that.
That's it. One of the kind of distinctions I've got quite comfortable with, and you just spoke to it, is this sort of idea. And I think one of shifting or moving, and it really sits at the heart of the whole hero's journey, it's a journey from concept to experience. And we're in a time when we have so many concepts and so much information and so much, data floating around, but to actually go on the journey to distinguish for ourselves which of those concepts really ring true to my soul and how they're expressed through the way I embody and experience the world, that's different than being able to articulate or recite the 5 steps to that or whatever.
Yeah, the other thing that this brings up in me is, having conducted and been on so many plant medicine ceremonies, a properly run plant medicine ceremony at shamanic doses is designed specifically to take you on a hero's journey and enter the cave of yourself and meet the dungeons and the dragons and the goblins and the googles and the angels and the demons and it requires a skilled guide, or you can actually get hurt. But it's really common for people to come out of a properly run shamanic ceremony and find themselves so much more awake, and actually, exactly like you said, realize that they're so different than their spouse. They don't know if they're compatible anymore, or that they can see how lost people are in the world. And, the other thing is that there's a real challenge commonly when people go back and start telling friends and family members about their experience and how it changed them, that now they find themselves in the non-consensus reality. And though they're trying to celebrate with people and celebrate, my God, I've overcome this pain that I had, or this pain of a divorce or a loss of a loved one or whatever. But instead, people are criticizing them, say, oh, that's not real. You were using drugs. And so now all of a sudden, the very people that were once your tribe are now attacking you. And so there you see automatically the next hero's journey says, here I am. And you're pushed into the non-consensus. And a lot of people have a hard time with that. And that's why I think integration work and staying close to somebody that knows how to go through the integration process is so important, because 2 things can happen to you. You can go so far into the non-consensus reality that you get lost and become very isolated and alone because you think nobody understands you or cares about you or loves you. Or you can fall back into the consensus and then start using the language of the consensus to deny the very experiences that you had, and then repress the wisdom that you've gained to fit in, which means you fall back into the child archetype. So right there, you have a choice to enter the warrior archetype and really say, this is who I am now. This is my values, and I will live it, whether it kills me or not, because it's my authentic self. Or you're afraid to be yourself and you fall back into the pit of the consensus. And the center of gravity is quite low in the consensus today. It's a very dangerous thing to fall back into. And you can see this not just with plant medicines, but think of all the people that have invented amazing technologies that were at first very attacked. I've got a poster right here on my wall that I have had for probably almost my whole career. And it's a picture of Albert Einstein, and it says, great minds have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. And I used to have to just sit and look at that poster. And I so loved Einstein. I read 3 of his biographies to really kind of get inside of his mind. And I studied the biographies of now over 150 of the greatest thinkers and achievers in the world. And every one of them walked through hell. Nobody had it easy. And so I think that there's the weight of responsibility, and the power of the experience. One of the things the mentor has to do is coach you on how to say and how much to say, unless you get to be my age and you don't give a shit anymore. Like, I don't fucking care if people don't like it because I have 2 wives or that I smoke pot at night or, you know, whatever it is. I mean, I've been so attacked. It's like, you know, it's amazing how the most uneducated and unexperienced people seem to know the most about everything and are the most critical. And so now I just like, you know, you guys can go fodle around because I know where you're going to end up when you're seriously broken anyhow. Somebody just like me or Chip Richards will have to screw your head back on for you and introduce you to yourself.
That's right. Well, I think I noticed that exact process happens, you know, even and super powerfully in the return from the Heart of Leadership work that we do, in particular with the whales who, you know, for many, the experience of looking from me to you, you know, a meter or two away into the eye of a 60-foot long ancient sentient being cracks them into a space which is quite synonymous for me to many of the sort of medicine experiences that I may have had. And the integration piece has become more and more and more a part of those journeys because, and sort of starting from day 2, we're already talking about this journey right here that you're having is actually the beginning of the real journey, which is when you leave here and you go home and you start to walk the path of what's waking up in you right now. And you know, the tendency is I want to show everybody every video and tell them everything that happened, and you know, we have to quite gently caution them to, as you do that, you got to be really careful because you find yourself either, you know, as you said, being massively misunderstood or kind of trying to sell something or convince someone of the specialness of what's just happened. And as you're doing that, it's like you're leaking the mana of the experience.
Yeah.
And then
you know that's my son's name, don't you? Yeah, and he is the mana, man.
Will not be leaked. That's right. Yeah. So that finding a way to share in a way that contains the potency of the experience and doesn't have you start second guessing it or have you start doubting it or have you get super defensive or create more distance, but find a way to thread or bridge the essence of what I've just experienced and discovered about myself, reintegrated back into the world. Ultimately, the ultimate aim is to transform the ordinary world into an extraordinary world. And it happens through these threads, right? And there's many ways, but ultimately the seems that the most powerful way is to live the discoveries. And it might just be in the twinkle of your eye when you open the door for someone. I used to want my wife Ash to come surf with me. And, you know, because I just love it so much. And I get so much out of being there in the sunrise and having the waves and seeing the dolphins and all of that. I just wanted to like bring her there. And I finally realized actually she doesn't need to come. She doesn't want that experience. What she wants is me showing up when I've had that experience and beaming as I am when I see her next, you know?
Yeah, there you go.
Full expression of me and right there with her as a result of having gone and had that sunrise experience. And you know, so I think oftentimes when we go on the journey, any type of journey, when we come back, one way to anchor it for ourselves is to go, okay, well, how can I embody what I've just discovered in a way that's going to light up the world of those I'm with and love the most? And that's, for me, it's the starting place usually.
Yeah, one of the things that I teach my students, because there's this real tendency when you get some knowledge to be a royal pain in the ass to everybody around you and try to get everybody in your family to stop eating sugar and gluten. And next thing you know, find yourself living on the street. As I say, remember this rule, ask, don't tell. Have you ever wondered what it's like to swim with whales? And if they say, no, I really want to know about that, then they've opened the door. Then you share. But if you go bomb them with whale experiences,
that's what I just did.
To the point where they hope they never see a whale again, then you know you're in that sort of teenage state of exuberance that can be a bit off-putting.
Totally. And I know the experience of having someone try to download everything they've just discovered all at once and have me just get it and appreciate it in the same way. And it can feel like a bombardment, right? So I think step one, live the principles, be the example. So people are like, wow, you got a special, different sort of sparkle about you today. What's going on?
Yeah.
And then I like that. Ask, if you want to go in, start with a question, start with curiosity.
Yeah. Well,
that's so cool.
You had on your outline here for the listeners, what tests are you currently facing? Who are your allies? Can you see that some of your greatest tests also become your greatest allies? But I thought it would be fun to say to you, Chip, what's a test that you're currently facing, and I'll see if I have one for you.
Yeah, great. So, yeah, probably a current test that I'm facing is that I have I can feel a lot of the work that I'm doing is growing to a new level, and I have historically, when I get really pressed to try to grow, one of my tendencies is instead of to open out and ask for help, I kind of dig in a bit deeper, and I want to like take it all on. Mm-hmm. And so one of my tests is how to grow in a way that's sustainable and a way that includes more others, and in a way that honors the essence of what I'm doing. So that's kind of a piece that I'm wrestling with is how to grow sustainably while holding the real core essence of what began the journey for me.
Yeah. I think for me, and it's been a long running test for me, is, I teach that love evolves in 3 stages: I, we, all. First, you have to learn to love yourself, because until you can do that, you're likely to be codependent in a we relationship, and that always leads to some kind of crisis. And before you can really be effective at loving the all, you have to understand relationships and you have to understand yourself. But that also, for me, turns out to be how I divide my time. And, my career has been so oriented to the all of humanity and to the we of my clients. It's very easy for me to find myself really craving time to be alone. And I can get to the point where I just don't want to be around anybody anymore. And that's not a healthy place to be as a therapist or a teacher or a guide. And because I have such a hermit in me, I have kind of 2 sides: the public and the therapist and the teacher and the guide, and then the Paul Chek that I am, and trying to find a balance so that Paul doesn't feel like he's just pouring so much of himself out that he's not having a chance to be with the self and the soul of him. And then, because my life changed a lot, when I was 54, Mona came along. And then when I was 57, Zoe came along. And that was quite a change for me. And I struggled because I really didn't think I wanted to be a daddy anymore. I was like, oh my God, I got 63,000 children already called students. But I really realized that the universe put them in my life, one, because I was finally ready to be a dad. I finally was mature enough and calm enough to begin that journey again. But 2, I have to face this challenge that I'm still trying to feed the needs of my inner self from all the outputting constantly. And so I have to deal with this kind of double-edged sword of how do I give myself what I need, but also spend enough time with Angie, Penny, and the kids that I'm not starving them out. And then how do I then manage the we of therapy and clients and family with the responsibility to the all, such as podcasting and doing videos for social media and YouTube to help people awaken and heal and grow. And that's been a tough one for me. It really has. And I'm finally finding a rhythm with it. One of the things that I've I've had to work with Penny on is just, even when we need money, just to say no sometimes, because I just found that working for money is a great way to kill yourself. And that I have to say yes when I'm ready to be present with people, and say no when I'm not, even if it means I have to tighten up on spending or whatever it might be. But I don't know. For me, that's the hero's journey that I seem to be on right now, is how do I balance the I, the we, and the all, so that I can stay well-rounded and also love the people that need my love, such as family and friends, and have something to give to the all. And I find for many that I work with that are people that have reached that stage in their own development where they really have something of substance to give to the all, that they all struggle with that too.
Yeah. I think you're striking a few chords deep for me as well. And I felt to share something that happened here on our land in the last few months, because it's kind of brought me to a place of deep reflection. And I think it's in this theme. I'm a beekeeper, and we started with one hive, I guess about 12 years ago. And we've planted so many herbs and flowering trees and natives here that it's created a ecosystem that's been really conducive to the bees. And they, each spring, as you would know probably a bit about bees, I'm sure,
We have bees.
when the hive maxes out and life feels abundant, they'll swarm. And it's kind of the beehive's way to perpetuate the species. That if life's big enough here, this is our chance. We break into two, and the queen flies out, and she brings half the bees with her, and they look for a new hive, and she leaves the old one for a new queen to be born in. And anyway, we started collecting the swarms as they started happening on our property, and within about 3 years, we had 22 hives here.
Wow, that's a lot, man.
Oh man, and it quickly went from being, in the beginning when I had one hive, I was going up to that hive like 6 or 7 times a day. I was like, oh, I got a break between meetings. I better go check on the bees, or I'm going to go pick some lettuce. I better go see how the bees are doing. And I didn't want anything from them. I just spent time with them. I sung to them. I played my flute to them. There was this sort of natural devotion that came from just feeling and growing this connection with them. And then it was interesting as they started to multiply, and my life is busy flying to different countries and doing different things. I noticed I still absolutely adored them, but my time with them became way more tactical. I'd have an hour and I go, oh, fuck, I better go harvest some honey and check for beetles in this one. And I always felt behind, and I always felt like, oh man, what am I supposed to give it all up and just be a beekeeper? What am I doing here? And then I started giving them and sharing them away with people. So, more and more beehives that were being born here were kind of, and that felt good. But long story short, you may or may not be aware of the varroa mite. It's a real problem for beekeepers. It's a little parasitic mite.
Yeah,
that's been treated by pesticides so long in the U.S. and Europe that
it's resistant.
When it arrived to Australia last year, it was nuclear in its strength, and it arrived to our region a few months ago, and about 2 days after I found out about it, my hives started to drop off. And
oh, geez.
And literally within 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we lost 13 hives.
Jesus, that's terrible.
Yeah. Oh, and it was and it's gross, and it's difficult, and it's messy, and at the time we had 15. So because I'd been giving them away. So we suddenly, for the first time in 10 years, instead of having hives all over, we had 2 hives.
Oh, wow.
And one of them was the runt of the litter. It was like the smallest hive going through winter. I kind of had to limp it through and bring it through. And what's interesting is I didn't know if we were going to lose them all. It was a real innermost cave moment for me. I thought, wow, we might. And all of my friends and most of the beekeepers in this area that are natural beekeepers, their hives are just gone. What happened as an automatic response is I suddenly found myself spending time up with them. I just really wanted to understand what's going on and how can I help, and just sitting with them and listening and kind of going, oh, and getting little impulses around ways to manage the hive and ways to position them and how to identify the risk factors. And quite interestingly, over the last 2 months now, those two hives went from being really quiet to now fully pumping. And they're now going to be the breeding ground of the next generation of hives, probably in this whole area. And
Great.
And I guess bees, they've been around for 80 million years, so they'll figure it out. But they have a new generation every 4 to 6 weeks, so they can evolve their. We're hoping that they can evolve their DNA quick enough to be responsive. But what the punchline for me is that the way I've been with the bees in the last 2 months has brought me back to the essence of where it started for me, which was just a very simple devotion.
Yeah.
And a real just genuine, deep connection and like massive appreciation. And now as they grow again, I think my aim is to keep that essence of devotion there in the center and not to take on so much that I find myself in a tactical relationship with them,
Right.
And I think, listening to your story, I think about that sometimes with my own family when everything's so busy, just remembering that sort of feeling of devotion with them doesn't get sacrificed or doesn't get compromised because of the tactics of everything else that's pulling me around. So anyway, that's something that's I've been thinking about a lot. It's helping me think about the growth of my business and everything, but how do I do it from a place of, this is the only hive I got. I'm gonna honor you and cherish you and listen to you from the center.
Yeah, that's what you've just shared is it's touching on many levels of the human condition and our interaction with nature, and the paradox of the fact that we're killing off our own umbilical cord to life, and without the kind of love that you're giving the bees and realizing is the best form of love for them, they could be extinct, which is, as you know, happening all over the world. But isn't that true of us too? And for the same exact reasons.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that right there is the hero's journey that we're all on this planet right now. And the sad part of it is that the grand majority of people are completely clueless to it because they're so distracted by design, by the people that are making money off of this distraction and coercion. And so I really hope that the story of the bees is the story, your story of the bees is also becomes the story of us,
Yeah.
Because, there are real threats in that cave. And if we're not present, we might have to come to the realization that the threats that are in the cave are the ones we put there, like Roundup and
that's it.
EMF pollution. The same things that are killing the bees are killing us, and the same thing that's killing nature is killing us. And that's one of the swords I carry in my heart every day is, and that's one of the reasons we bought this 14-acre property and built a farm. And I think we have 58 animals now and bees and the kids, I want them to really understand the cycle of life and the responsibility that comes with love and what it means to be healthy. And there's just so many people now in the world that have gotten so far from the relationship to nature that they're so caught in the mental dimension and in the dimension of imagination and illusion.
Yeah.
This is why I did a podcast a while back called The Danger of Living in Two Realities, to show what happens if you spend too much time in a digital reality and you lose touch with the analog reality of our nature, that you can actually invite catastrophe.
Mm.
And I just think that what you just shared is almost like a perfect copy of the big picture of the world.
Yeah, it's been one of my deepest journeys for a little while, and it's beautiful to have you see the meta view of it. And
It's very real.
Yeah, it's very, very real. And I think if we tie it back to the sort of theme of our conversation today, it that little move that I've made to answer the call and lean in and surrender to what's going on out there in the apiary is waking up parts of me that of course have been there all along, but they got covered up by all the layers of everything else. And when we are willing to go on those journeys authentically, even at our ages and well beyond, I think it's part of the solution, right? Because now the way I'm walking, the way I'm looking into the eyes of every person I meet is slightly altered because of that journey that I've been on or that I'm in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of unmything ourselves and starting to consciously be aware of the hero's journey that we're in, and then lean into the moments and recognize there's a bigger story unfolding here and I'm actually part of it.
Yeah.
I think it gives us some agency.
It does. And I'm grateful to be able to share this podcast with you, because there's, this, what we've just shared today, I think should be in every 7th grade and every 8th grade and 9th grade and 10th grade and until it resonates at the core of a person's being. Because we are dangerously distracted from what gives us the opportunity to be human and be alive.
Yeah.
And now is not a good time to be distracted. Now is a good time to protect life.
I guess one of the things that makes me feel happy about where I'm at sitting on this land and knowing that you're on your 14 acres is that one of the antidotes to all of the AI and everything else seems to be real, genuine, cellular, physical experience. And and I feel grateful to be in a world that people like you exist, that are so masterful in your understanding of the physical experience that it's become a doorway into the infinite. And you're guiding people every moment in ways and don't know to take to giving them permission to answer the call and start and continue and deep dive into their own caves.
Yeah, well, I think that's what we're all here to do. I mean, I think I really see the earth as a nursery for souls. It's where we come to experience the intensity and density of the 3D plus time reality, but it's also where we come to awaken to who and what we really are. And it's times like we're in that are like the caterpillar dissolving and activating its imaginal cells so that it can realize itself as a butterfly and break out of the cocoon and become what it came to be. And I think we're in that dissolving stage right now, but it takes everybody that has some life experience like you and I are sharing to activate the imaginal cells. Because, if we were having a conversation like this 100 years ago, people would be capable of really listening to us for a couple of hours and ingesting it. But now the average attention span's only like 6 to 10 seconds. And there's nothing meaningful that can be conveyed in 6 to 10 seconds. There's no myth that is that short. There's so the real issue is we're kind of walking on this tightrope of reality. And on one side is the illusion of an easier life with technology. And on the other side is the realities of the process of a spiritual awakening to develop the awareness that who and what we really are can't die, and that it is really God embodied. And that's the alchemical process that I think if we become more aware of, then we realize that we need to think about what it takes to get to the next stage of our own evolution, or we can unconsciously abort the birthing process. And that means it's like and Monopoly, when you have to go back to the start of the game because you got, whatever that do not pass go or whatever it is.
Totally.
But so we're in a really interesting time, but you and I have both devoted our life to helping activate imaginal cells and grow butterflies. And I know that Chek professionals are doing their best to do the same. And I know there's a lot of great teachers and people out there that are pouring their heart into this. And a lot of my friends are podcasters and people that are, 100% committed to activating imaginal cells and protecting the earth and protecting sovereignty and helping people wake up to the truth of themselves. And I guess the paradox of it is these things give you and I a reason to really give life a big hug every day,
Big time.
Yeah.
And as you were describing that, what I was picturing, I was kind of picturing the map that we've just walked through. And in a way, you were describing the ordinary world that the planet's in right now. And there's a call to adventure, which is ultimately calling us to remember who we really are as a species.
Yeah.
And it, listening to you, I can hear that there are a growing number of people that are hearing the call and they're willing to answer, and they're answering, and they've crossed the threshold and they're on the journey. But the call is getting louder through species extinction and all sorts of everything. It's getting louder and louder and louder. And I think those who are crossing the threshold and on the journey to reconnect, remember, reharmonize are hoping that we can all get on the journey to return to who we really are without having that call be so dramatic that it's like the ultimate knee blowout and finishes the game for a while, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, do you want to, before we wrap up, do you want to share any of the practical steps for people to sort of help them put this dialogue into context so that they can do something with it as either as a self-reflection tool or a self-realization tool?
I'd love to, Paul. Thanks. I think first and foremost is to just to open your perspective to the possibility that you are already a hero or a Shero on a hero's journey. And this isn't a formula. This doesn't fit neatly into a spreadsheet, but there's a framework, there's a rhythm that runs through life. And the first invitation is just to open up the possibility that you're already on the journey, and actually raising awareness to what's happening and where you are is like becoming aware of a map that you're holding in your hand, and will help you navigate the steps you're in and what's ahead. And I think if you're up for that, which I would imagine most listeners are and are already aware of, some really simple steps and questions and it kind of will bring us through where we've been. Firstly, just getting a sense for where we're at and in specific, what's my current ordinary world? What's my current garden look and feel like? What's the season of my life right now? And is there something deep inside that I can feel is calling me? And we might not even know what it is, but that granular of sand inside the oyster, what is it that's agitating or pulling or whispering to me, that's pulling me out of the season that I'm in to begin a journey towards something else? I think just becoming aware where we are and what's calling is a great first step. Mm-hmm. And then I think also just being willing to look retrospectively and recognize the journeys that you have had, the
Right.
thresholds that you have crossed, the allies and mentors that you have met, the moments of true commitment that you have leaned into, the caves that you've been courageous enough to move right into the depths of, and what you claimed from those. So kind of taking sometimes a retrospective reflection on the hero's journeys that you've walked in life can give you confidence to know that no matter where you are in the journey, it's pulling you lifeward. It's pulling you towards a deeper, more accurate view of who you are and who you came here to be. And so you can have, it might not solve the current situation you're in, but it will give you perspective that allows you to see, oh, okay, well, the next move is up here to the left. I think nature provides a tremendous access point to these natural rhythms. And so oftentimes if we're not sure where we're at, or we're not sure what to do next, I'm in the cave, or I'm at a point of true commitment, or I'm, that, and you've talked about this in a few ways, resting in the natural rhythms around you, or it gives us access to the parts of us that know. And so, finding those mirrors in nature, and also in your closest allies, the ones you can pull into and sit quietly with, the ones that in your heart of heart, see you for who you really are.
Yes.
A lot of athletes that I've talked to, and athlete coach combinations, the athletes will talk about the moments that their coach saw something in them that they didn't even yet see.
Right.
So we do have mentors and allies around us that do see us. And sometimes we need to be that for others.
Yes, absolutely. I think too, I just want to remind everybody that getting your book, Writing the Story Within, it would be a great exercise to bring this whole podcast into a relaxing self-adventure to give you the inner insight and opportunity to explore your own inner cave at the safety of your own home and your own time. And then instead of listening to us talk about it and trying to remember it all and go looking around for all these pieces, just say, wow, Chip gave me a map, and he also gave me the guidance I need to recognize myself and where I'm at in the journey, and how to be fully present for the next stage, knowing what's archetypally likely to occur. And I think that that's such an important offering you've got right there.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Yeah, you're right. I almost stepped right over that. It really is. And I think, as you said in the very beginning, the ability to write, and I think there's something like 48 different exercises along with it's a really a practical guide into the hero's journey of our own life story. It allows our realization of those stages and our embodiment of those stages to happen at a pace that's not too confronting, and that can reveal the discoveries in a way that we can sit with, rest with, and then integrate. I think the next level up from that is the retreat work that we do, which is called the Heart of Leadership. Are really one's in Tonga each year, one's in Japan, one's in Australia, and they're really designed as 8-day experiential hero's journeys. So it's we talked about the power of moving from concept to experience. That those whole retreats are designed to go in and follow this archetypal pathway for your own, so you end up with visceral cellular memories and reference points of what it feels like to cross the threshold, what it feels like to go into the cave, what it feels like to surrender and have a whale look me in the eye.
Awesome. Well, I encourage people to consider that. And what a great gift it would be to have a mentor like you with so much experience in guiding people through this process, and to be comfortable in your skin, knowing that you're investing in real leadership and real wisdom. I think that's super important because there's so many courses and opportunities and things being thrown at people these days, that one of the things I love about my podcast is I get to use my skills of selection to say, who is it that I want to expose people to? Because the worst thing that'll happen is you'll wake up, clean up, grow up, and show up because you encountered a person like this. And so I got to say thank you for this and for all the things that you're doing. It's such a great thing for us to be able to reconnect. And, you know, from day one, you've always been the kind of guy I could hang out with forever. And the world just took us in different directions. But I feel like we haven't missed a beat in some magical way.
I feel totally the same. Super enriched and like timeless, really. And yet deeper, like seismically deeper every time. So I can't wait till the next time. I hope it's tomorrow, but if it's in another decade, I know it'll be 10 times as rich as well.
Well, we both have less hair and it's all changing colors. So we know it's been a while. If our watches don't work, we have indicators we've been around for a while.
Totally. Totally. Well, I what I love, and it does speak to the hero's journey, is that, you know, the essence that I see in you and feel in you and the connection that I feel with you, I felt it as a spark in the very first meeting in the gym at the Australian Institute of Sport. And so that spark was like a call to adventure, you know, and the gifts and the elixirs of the journeys that we've both had, but our touch points, you know, in a sense, the essence is absolutely the same, but my appreciation and the depth of my experience of you just gets deeper every time we connect. So I'm so grateful.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Where can people reach you, Chip? Any websites, anything you want to share for contact information?
Yeah, chiprichards.global is a great place to find me website-wise. There's probably even a direct email there for people that want to reach out to me. I'm on the most socials. I don't spend that much time, but probably Instagram or probably LinkedIn or Instagram if people want to reach out directly. And super invite that. And, you know, I think something about this work is that it's so personal, but it's also quite universal. So I always love to hear what's unfolding in people's stories, and would certainly invite people to reach out.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I hope you guys really enjoyed the journey that Chip and I have just invited you to join us on. I sure as hell have, man. It's been awesome. You know, some of these things too, you know, I think you'd agree, Chip, no matter how deeply you and I know this, just talking to each other about it polishes the facets of the diamond. And I feel right now like, you know, if somebody was to come up to me and say, hey, what do you know about the hero's journey? Would you like to take a class? And I'd say, no, I've studied it my whole life. But I realized in this dialogue that I still am learning, and I'm still seeing deeper. And if there's one place to really stay awake and stay open to it, it is all the facets of the hero's journey, because being archetypal, timeless, that is almost like a template that the light of eternity shines through as it reaches into time. And so we can go back to the hero's journey cycle, and we can see where we're at in the field of time and experience, but also by being more clear about the fact that we came through the lens of eternity into time to have this experience, we can say, wow, now that I'm more awake to what I chose, I can be more efficient and more effective and more present in that process. And that's what you've done for me today.
Wow. That's beautiful. I'm so grateful, Paul. So grateful.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. Thank you. Well, thank you to all of you guys. I hope you've enjoyed the journey with Chip and I. And I highly encourage you to consider doing one of his 8-day hero's journey processes and meeting the whales. And now the Japan one, is that also whales, or are there different themes in different ones?
Different themes and different ones. The Japan one is around the mountain, so it's a backcountry ski and snow adventure.
Oh,
but still following the archetypal path, but it tends to be it has a different flavor because, as you would know, the mountain has different lessons than the whale does.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And the Australian one
is surfing, point to point walking, and bees. So this is a place
cool.
of deep creative devotion here. So yeah,
that's beautiful. That's such three very cool ways to engage this process. Each gives the listener or the guest a chance to see where their heart calls them, and I think that's what a beautiful gift. It's so exciting for me to hear how you've created a life that is really full of meaning and love and connection and value for you.
Thank you, Paul. It's wonderful to be seen by a brother.
You can feel it in your writing. I mean, you're a very lucid, clear writer, and the same presence you have here, you have in your writing, which I think is special. Sometimes you meet a writer of a book and you realize that you didn't know them like you thought you knew them.
Yeah.
But I really feel your authentic presence in what you create, which I think that's a sign that the diamond's quite well polished. And I appreciate that in anybody, really.
Wow. That's beautiful. Well, I'm taking that in, and I think my closing reflection to you that one of the things I've appreciated so much about this conversation is that you've asked a lot of questions, and so I've shared, but every time you've gone to speak, what I've felt like is, even though you do have the weight of knowledge of all your experiences and all the study and all the deep dive into so many areas and schools of thought, I feel like your response to life in the moment is totally alive. And you everything you shared was it was like putting mulch on the garden that was growing, and loaded with what you know, but also simultaneously just open to what's emerging in this moment. And that to me is like mastery, like in a such a beautiful way to witness and be part of.
Thank you. It's fun. That's my way of having fun. Well, thank you again to all of you guys for listening. Thanks for sharing this very important episode with as many of your friends as you think would benefit from it, and family members. And also thank you so much to my sponsors for investing in organic farming, regenerative farming, biodynamic farming, to make your products that keep us all so healthy. Thanks for anything you buy from the sponsors. You're supporting ethical, moral companies, supporting the care of the planet, supporting the podcast, and most importantly, you're supporting yourself with the very quality of products and foods that I personally give my kids and myself every day, or I wouldn't dare share them with you, because I'm all too aware of who I am. I live in you and you live in me. So I don't want to poison the rest of me. And I look forward to sharing something exciting with you in the next podcast. Chip, you will be forever loved right here. And let's get together sometime and see what else you can have a rap session with me about. Maybe we can talk about your seeds book, or I'm sure you'll have something rise up that you want to share, and I'll say, yay.
I look forward to that day big time, and it would only be bettered by the opportunity to be sitting on the same couch together having this conversation. So we'll see if that seed can grow one day.
Well, let's do it. I'll make sure I have something special in my vaporizer and my espresso machine and my refrigerator and my everywhere. My rock garden, my greenhouse, you name it. My gym.
I think an in-person visit is long overdue. But for the meantime, it's just been an absolute gift to my soul to spend time with you, Paul. Thanks so much.
Me too, buddy. Well, lots of love to you guys. Thank you. Thank you. I'll come back with you soon with something new and interesting and exciting. And until then, hey, live the dream, baby. You're on the hero's journey. But remember, ultimately, we are safe. We are home and we are whole. Aho, great spirit. It is done. It is done. It is done.
Thank you for listening to Spirit Gym with Paul Chek and today's guest, Chip Richards. Chip is offering Paul's listeners a special discount to join in a Heart of Leadership retreat, such as the upcoming trip to Tonga to swim with humpback whales, or to be part of the Heart of Leadership 12-month mentorship program. For more details and dates, reach out to Chip through his website at chiprichards.global and mention you heard him on Spirit Gym with Paul Chek. Connect with Chip on Instagram at chip.richards and on YouTube at New Earth Creations. And make sure to pick up copies of his books, Writing the Story Within, A Dynamic Creative Journey, Becoming the Writer You Came Here to Be, and The Seed of Dreams, a practical guide to growing bold visions in the garden of your life, both available on Amazon and other good booksellers. For more interaction with Paul and to share ideas and ask questions about the topics discussed in this podcast, we invite you to join his Spirit Gym program and community. You can participate in live Q&A sessions with his podcast guests, access the members forum within the Spirit Gym community where you can chat with other members, attend weekly virtual meetups with Paul, and study his comprehensive Master Key online program. Explore the options and subscribe today by going to myspiritgym.com. And finally, if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to the show on the podcast platform of your choice. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Audible, and YouTube.